All righty, officially now, good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, January 19th. This is the first day of our Biology 430 class. Typically, people don't accidentally stumble into the wrong Canvas class, so that you all should be here because you want to be here. Some of you are a little louder than others, so I'm going to mute you, but please, by all means, if you have questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask those questions. As I was saying earlier, I truly believe that the only stupid question is the question not asked, so make sure that you do that. So a couple of quick things. When you come in, most days, we will have some type of daily quiz. That daily quiz will either be at the beginning of class, like the attendance quiz is today, in which case, again, you'll have to log on here to Canvas, see the access code, and then go back to Canvas to get it, to take it. Those daily quizzes are going to be 5 points. You're going to have 5 minutes to complete them. And like I said, we will either do it at the very beginning of class or we will do it at the end of the time when I am talking. So this encourages you to be on time for lecture and also to stay through the entire lecture. The other thing that you will have at the beginning of class is you will have a schedule of the upcoming events. All of this stuff is on your syllabus and in other places on our Canvas site, but I think it's always a good reminder of the things that we have. And as you can see, we start this semester a little bit light, but don't worry, we're going to pick up steam and get busy a little bit later on. So as you can see today, we're going to do an introduction to the class. Again, I've been helping many people with this as we've been working through it, and I've given a lot of instructions, but we'll still go to it together because there's a lot of material and it's easy to get lost. And then we will actually dive into lecture today as well, talking about our anatomical terminology. We will have a lab today where we will start our discussion of organs and organ systems. After today's class, and this was something that was asked about earlier, but I will go over it again now. There is going to be available a chemistry quiz. As I mentioned earlier, these are not my questions. Chemistry is a prerequisite to get into this class. We have a tremendous amount of material to cover, so I don't have time to remind you about what an acid or a base is, or what a covalent bond versus an ionic bond, or things along those lines. So I went to one of the chemistry instructors on campus and said, hey, a student who successfully completes your class as the prerequisite for my course, give me 20 questions they should know the answer to. And so that is this chemistry quiz. So again, to prepare for it, you should look back at your chemistry materials. If you took it 10 years ago, if you burnt all those chemistry materials, then the second chapter of your textbook is chemistry. We are going to talk about macromolecules. That's the part that's interesting. That's the part that is fun. That is what we will talk about. So anything up till then is mostly going to be what's on there and maybe something else. I mean, it's only half a chapter, but still, it's probably a good starting point. There are also a ton of handouts that must be completed for this class as well. The Canvas site has been open for a week. Actually, that's what I want you guys to do for me real quickly. Real quickly, on your participants page, there's a place for you to be able to put yes and no. I want you to give me an answer, yes or no. You should have at least, sorry, try that again in English. You should at this point have at least received 2 or more emails from me. If you have not received 2 or more emails from me, hit no. If you have gotten 2 or more emails from me, hit yes. I don't want it in the chat. I want on your participants. I want you to click the button, yes or no.
Is that a tab in Canvas called participants?
No, so if you on your bar where it says your mute and your video and things like that, you should, or if you're on your phone or something like that, Mac should be somewhere different, but there should be a place where you can do emotes or do things along those lines. Again, I'm not counting the yeses that are in the chat. There you go, reactions tab, there you go. So for some of you, it'll be reactions tab. There's a reaction tab place where you should be able to say yes or no. I don't want the yeses in the chat. I want you clicking that yes or no button. So reaction tabs or under participants, you should be able, so far I've got 21. That's not even half of you yet. Come on, let's not take all day to do this. All right, Alyssa, I see your thumbs up. That works. That works. But the same place you see that should be a place to see say yes or no. So try to see if you can roam around and look to see if you can find that place.
It's only going to be under participants. So it's not under
Oh.
reactions at all.
Oh, it's not in the reactions tab? Okay, so excellent. So yes, so if you click on the participants, you should see the list of
all the way at
participants.
the bottom. It'll
And
give
all
you
the way at the bottom of that, it should,
yes,
yes, no, go faster, go slower, more. There you go, numbers creeping up. All right, it's an online class. Just remember, we need to be sophisticated in this. Either some of you guys don't understand the question, forgot the question because it's been so long, but participation and competency with the materials on this class are going to be important for your success. Wait, how did the numbers go down? I just had one from 26 to 25 yeses. All right. So let's do this. If you have not received at least 2 emails from me, then one of the important things it's going to be to check with eServices to make sure that you have your email set up correctly. I use the contact students in the eServices tab. Many of you have it forwarded to your personal email. Just make sure you're checking that. I will sometimes use the announcements in Canvas as well, so it's good to have that set up as well. All right. So the website's been open for a week. Many of you have gotten on and started doing these things, and there are many handouts that need to be completed. We have a lab safety form, even though we are all taking this from the comfort of our own home. For whatever reason, we are required to complete a lab safety form. So I guess if I ask you to breathe in and out and you swallow your M&M, we can't be sued. I don't have any idea why we're doing it, but it is required. So make sure you fill that lab safety form out. A couple of quick things. Remember to sign it at the bottom. And also 2/3 of the way down the page is where you put in your emergency contact person's information, not your information. So if you spontaneously combust on screen, you don't want me calling you, you want me calling whoever your lab safety person is. I have had appointments for meeting me with 5 minutes, get a chance to introduce ourselves to each other, get 5 points of extra credit for that. There are more meetings tomorrow. I will be posting a few more of those as well to try to get those in because those are due by Thursday. And that Proctorio syllabus quiz is due. Read the Proctorio page, read the syllabus, and familiarize yourself with Proctorio. From talking to the students in for fives, I would say about half of the students haven't had an exam on Proctorio before. So make sure you're following the directions, make sure you're scanning your area properly, and everything along those lines. Next week, we have a bunch more assignments due. Many of your assignments are going to come out of your lab manual. I love many, many things about your lab manual. It is the Ammerman 3rd edition. Yes, it has to be the 3rd edition because it is different from the others. This is what it looks like for those of you who have not gotten it yet. And it is like a workbook. It has some pre-labs at the beginning, which are good vocabulary and identification type things, some activities, some will do, and some normally we would do, but we won't. But at the end of each unit is a unit review, and that unit review has 2 parts. The first part is a check your recall, which is more just regurgitating information. And the other is check your understanding, where you are doing some critical thinking type questions. And both components of that are going to be turned in. All assignments are due at the beginning of class, so don't wait till 5 minutes before class to submit it then. Technically, you can, and it would be fine. But if you're trying to get on and there's some type of connection issue and you're 5 minutes late, then that assignment is late. Now, the good news is you can turn assignments in late. In fact, you can turn assignments in up to 1 week late. But whether an assignment is 5 days late or 5 minutes late, that late assignment is only worth half credit. So it is important to make sure you complete your activities and get them turned in on time. Now, the lab reviews I see as directed studying. These are free points you're getting for studying, and studying should be a learning experience. Towards those ends, on most of the homeworks, and there will be a couple that will be otherwise, but on most of the homeworks, I'm going to grade you on completeness. I am looking for time. I am looking for effort. If you have a question that says, is something A or B and explain, and you say A, that's not time and effort, right? I want time and effort. So if leaving an answer blank, not completing an answer, things along those lines will cause you to lose points. But as long as you put time and effort into your answers, even if they're wrong, you will get full credit for them. So this is free points for studying, and the days that they're due will also be when the keys are posted, so you can get that immediate feedback of checking your answers and see what is right and what is wrong. Mastering A&P is an exercise, is a resource, our online resource, our primary online resource other than Canvas. And I'll be showing you all of those things as well. And there's a brief introduction assignment due for that as well. It is also due Tuesday, but not till the end of the day. The other thing we're going to be doing a lot with is going to be our, why do I have lab safety manuals on there too? Which one? I don't remember which one is the correct date. I'll have to check that. Some lab simulators. We'll be using Physiox, and the other main one we'll be doing is Labster. There's a link to the Labster. It's these online lab simulators. They are not entirely intuitive. You have to really read the instructions and follow the instructions, which I know can be very hard to do. But the problem is it can lock you up sometimes. I've gotten stuck a couple times because I'm holding the pipette and I forgot to put the pipette holder away before I tried to go to the next step. So they're not particularly hard, but they can be a bit time consuming. When you do this Labster, it is linked through Canvas, so your grade will already be input. To get full credit on these assignments, you must complete the entire assignment and you must get at least 80% correct. If you don't, well, then you have two choices. You can either get partial credit for it, or the best thing you can do is take it again. You can take it as many times as you like. So if you want to rush through it the first time to figure out what you're doing and then do it for real the second time, I'm fine with that. Again, it's directed studying. So you can take it as many times to bring your grade up. So again, there's no reason not to get full credit on those. And some student info sheets that you're going to be filling out just for me. More reviews, more Labsters. And then Thursday the 28th is 1 week from our first exam. So we will have a practice exam on that day. So when you log on, you will always see our schedule and all the things that go along with it like this. All right. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment because this is the point where all of you get to be on camera. Everybody turn on your cameras. Get on. I'm not going to require you to have your cameras on all the time during class. This is college and you are adults. Right. So again, if you want to lay in bed, you're welcome to do that. If you want to fall asleep, then you're paying to be here. All I ask is to have your mic off so that you're not bothering us with your snoring. But what I do expect is for this class to be interactive. All right. I expect us to, me to ask questions and you to answer them. You'd ask questions and I will answer them. And I expect it to be interactive. Learning is better when it is an interactive process. All right, so I'm not going to require you to keep your cameras on as long as you are interacting with me. If I ask a question, I want people to say yeses or no, click their yeses or no buttons. I want people to give out verbally the responses. Right, if you've got little kids around you and that you're taking their classes at the same time and you have to type the answer in the chat, that is acceptable, but it is not my preferred method. As you know, this is not a class that belongs online. So I don't want to treat it like an online class. So I'm going to try to treat this as much as we would in a hands-on class. And I want it to be as interactive as possible because otherwise it's going to be brutal. This class, I'm going to sit here and talk at you for 3 to 4 hours every day. And if that's all it is, me staring at blank screens, I get nothing out of that. And if that's going to be the case, then I should just be recording the lectures. I could have recorded them all this weekend and I could sleep all semester long. It benefits you for this to be live and interactive, and it benefits me the same way. So we have to work together as a team on this so that everybody can be successful. So that is what I want from you. Yes, Cody, I do record the lectures. I have them posted on a YouTube channel. There's a link to that. So smash that like and subscribe button so I can become YouTube famous, right? You can follow me on some of my other social medias as well. My Parlor site's temporarily taken down, but I still have the OnlyFans and I'm still on Grindr. So you can find me on any of those. All right. So questions on any of that? All right, excellent. Let's talk about the things that are going to help you to be successful. The primary place you are going to be is on our website. So let's look here. Excellent. So again, from your homepage on our site, we have the information here. You have your announcements, any new announcements again, and you can set it up so that you get these fed to you. So you get that information right away when it posts. The pages is where we have our home page. This is also where we have information on other things that will help you to be successful. This is where the Proctorio page is going to be, where you can find it for the instructions if you haven't taken that quiz yet. But the other two things that are going to help you to be successful in this class, and by doing that, I mean help you to study and do well, but also provide extra credit, is going to be an open lab and the Science Success Center. Jeff Chingaris is our instructional assistant. He also teaches at Sac State. He also teaches at Sierra. He is an amazing instructor with a vast amount of knowledge, too much, quite frankly. And normally he does a Friday open lab where people can come on campus and work with the models and work with the materials and work with the resources. Obviously, we can't be on campus, but he has many of the models, he has many of the microscope slides, and he has 2 cameras set up, and he is there as a question and answer to provide information for people who need help. When you log on, and the link to that is here, tell him you're there so you check in with him so he checks you in. Tell him when you leave so he checks you out. And in that way, he's able to keep track of the hours that you're there. We need to do that for 2 reasons. One, we have to justify giving him the FTE to be doing this open lab. So by having students, proof that students go there, we get to continue to do this and you get to continue to use him as a resource. But the other advantage of doing it is if you go, for every hour that you spend in open lab, I will give you 1 point of extra credit, up to 15 total points. Now that doesn't mean just go to 15 hours and stop. Go to 45 hours of open lab if you have the time. But you can only get up to 15 points of extra credit. But I will tell you right now, if you go to open lab and are active in the learning process there, yes, you'll get 15 points of extra credit, but you'll also get a tremendous amount more information, which will help you to get far more than 50 points on the exam. Now, I appreciate that this is only on Friday from 10 to 30 a.m. to 8:30. It's a wide range of time, so hopefully you can find a couple hours a week to be able to go. But if that's not something that works in your schedule, there's also the Science Success Center. The Science Success Center, besides being a tongue twister, is a program that we developed several years ago based on a program that was established in this Minnesota med school. This med school in Minnesota found that they were having this issue where 50% of their first year medical students were failing after their first semester. They were having this huge attrition rate, and they did this big, huge study to figure out why. And what they realized is that the problem is that med students are smart. Because the problem with being smart, and we all know people like this, they never cracked a textbook in high school. They were the ones that sat in the back of the class and napped or read from their comic books and then aced the exams. And many of you know students in college that do that as well. If you're really, really smart, you never learn good techniques to study. And that's the problem, because once they got to med school, they didn't have the skills necessary to be successful. When they were finally at a level that challenged them, they weren't up to the challenge. And so they installed this program that all first years had to take to learn how to take notes, to learn how to read a textbook, to learn how to prepare for an exam, and to study an exam afterwards. All of these resources are available, and we've basically taken these programs and adjusted them to science in general. This is basically a half-unit class. You meet once a week for a half an hour to an hour, and they give you homework, but your homework is to read the textbook of what you're doing or to do a concept map or whatever access we're doing. So it's not extra work. It's all directly related to what we're doing in the classroom. It takes 6 to 8 weeks to complete it. And at the end of that, if you complete this, you will get 15 points of extra credit. Now, I encourage you to do both the science skills and the open labs. But if you do both, you still only get 15 points of extra credit. No double dipping on that. Caitlin, you have a question?
Yes. So my question was that if you wanted to learn a specific study habit or tool, do you have to take the whole class, or can you jump into like a single class to learn that skill and then jump out?
My understanding is that you have to take the whole class. What I would say, though, is that it isn't just some random class. You are basically meeting with an instructor and a tutor, and they can customize the class to meet whatever goals you want. So there's something like 15 different concepts, and each student only does somewhere between 6 and 8. So you can tailor it to the things that are of interest and important to you. And maybe if you have a really good note-taking style, then that's something that you wouldn't have to do. So I don't think there isn't any drop-in as far as I'm aware of, although again, if you contact them, you may be able to ask that question. But I think you have to take the whole class.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but I would suggest checking with that email or going to the link to the Science Success Center for that as well. All right, I don't have to teach you about Confer Zoom because again, you're all here in lecture, so hopefully you figured that out. And again, if you haven't done, well, we'll get to it in a second. Syllabus is here, we'll go over that in a second. Actually, let's go ahead and go over that now. So again, this is Biology 430, this is the first class. Here are your student learning outcomes. If you ever have trouble sleeping at night, I encourage you to come and read this. I've gotten probably the most emails I have received is about the resources for these classes. Again, as I mentioned, there are basically 3 things you must have to get points because we have assignments directly related to them. That is a textbook. We are using the Mylab Human Anatomy and Physiology 11th edition, but any textbook that you want to use is fine that way. You need some resource that way. Our online resource, the Modified Mastering A&P, which not only having great study tools and other resources on there, also has some lab simulators that we're going to be using. And the lab manual that I showed you earlier. Now, with this not being in the classroom, as you can see in these bundles, there are other resources that are going to help you to be successful. One of these, for instance, and I'll close this so I can be all big again, is a photographic atlas. You are going to be tested on all the bones of the body and all their nooks and cranny without ever holding one of them in your hand. So having an atlas that does a nice job of showing them and identifying them can be a great resource to help you to study this. When we get to the muscles, not only do we have pictures of the cadavers in here, they've got some great model pictures similar to the ones we would have in the classroom and that you're going to be tested on. So it's a great resource to have with that. So if you're getting your textbook some other way or electronically, I encourage you to get an atlas of some sort. The other type of atlas that you are going to want is a histology atlas. Even though in this class you are never going to hold a microscope in your hand, we are going to do a buttload of histology. You are going to hate it and then learn to love it because you are going to get inundated with tissues in this class and in 431. And having an atlas for that is vitally important. It's not intuitive when you're looking at these tissues. It's something that we're not used to looking at the body in this way. Now, yes, absolutely, you can use the almighty Google. The problem with Google, as I deal with every morning, is every morning I get on Google and I type in Justin Bieber shirtless, right, to get my fix in the morning. And the problem is at least half of the pictures that come up aren't him. And a third of them aren't shirtless. And so again, but it's very easy for me to see which ones are correct and which ones are not. The problem is if you put ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelial tissue into a search engine and it comes up with a bunch of tissues, if you've never seen a ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelial tissue before, you may have a hard time figuring out which one is the ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelial tissue and which one is not the ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelial tissue. So having something like this that can show you a beautiful example of a ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelial tissue can get you to learn it. And then you can go to Google to see them at all different magnifications and all different sections and lots of examples. And you can tell the ones that are indeed a ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelial tissue.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
What was the second resource you showed us? The first one was the lab manual, and then the second resource was also an atlas.
Well, so yes, so you have two atlases. The photographic atlas is the one that comes with the textbook bundle. The Histology Atlas is the one that comes with the lab manual bundle. But like I said, if you're getting your lab manual through Chegg, which I'm perfectly fine, just make sure you can print off the pages that you need, then I encourage you to get another Histology Atlas. It doesn't have to be mine. Any good Histology Atlas. This is an excellent one. It comes in the bundle. And again, if it's not too late, the one thing that I'd remind you is, yes, it is cheaper to get things by Chegg, right? Because you can rent it for a semester. But remember, this is a 2-semester class. So you're renting it for 2 semesters. And if you're printing out the pages to fill them out, and then that's paper and ink that you're paying. So again, if you can steal paper and ink from work, then it's not a big deal, but just make sure that you are, again, I appreciate that there is a financial investment with this class, but remember, you're using these things for 2 semesters. And many of you are going into a field of study where these things are going to be useful for you far beyond this class as well. All right. So those are the 3 things you have to have, but then the other resources are things that can help as well. Let's go back to the syllabus. And of course, you have to have a microphone, you have to have a webcam. I prefer you to be on and interactive during lecture, but you have to have it for the proctorio exams. This is going to be what lecture is going to be like. Me sitting here waving my hands and yelling, you guys asking questions, me barely breathing in between sentences. I'd appreciate that I talk quickly. And again, make it interactive then. If I'm talking too fast, ask a question. Right? Again, I will never say it enough. The only stupid question is the question not asked. If you are confused about something, I guarantee somebody else is as well. So be the one that's brave enough to speak up, to raise your hand, to ask the question so that you can get the information that you need. You're paying good money for this class in resources and material and time. Doesn't benefit you if you're not getting what you need out of it. So make sure you're getting what you need out of this class and do that by asking questions. All right. I am recording them. I do post them. But again, watching the recorded videos is not an alternative to coming to class and being here on time. There are quizzes that we are doing on time. There are group activities that we're going to be doing during the class time. And all exams are going to be during class time as well. And let's talk about the exams. We have 5 lecture exams, 5 lab exams, and a final exam. The lecture exams and lab exams you will take on the same day. There are 2 separate tests. You can take them in either order that you want. One of the things to remember is this is one class, Biology 430, Anatomy and Physiology. So again, it's a little more tricky when we're in the classroom because we have more of a delineation between what's lab and what's lecture. We don't have quite the same delineation here, but we will have some. But things you learn in quote unquote lecture is not just what's going to be on the lecture exam. Things you learn in quote unquote lab is not going to just be on the lab exam. You're responsible for all the information on all of the exams. Yes, lecture exams tend to lend themselves more to processes, right? Describe the process of homeostasis. Describe the process of producing an action potential. Anything that has steps makes an awesome essay question. But I could also ask you to describe the specific types of synovial joints, or the specific types of connective tissues, or something along those lines. Lab exams are going to be primarily images with arrows pointing at them. Those images can be images from your textbook, from other resources of studying, models, charts, random things I find on Google. Yes, it's going to be identifying things, but it will also be what is the function of this? What is the action of this, right? What does it do? Things along those lines as well. All lecture exams are worth 100 points, but the lab exams are going to vary. This first section doesn't have quite as much lab material on it, so my guess is somewhere between 60 and 70 questions. When we get to, for instance, the bones and the muscles, there's a lot more material there. My guess is there'll probably be somewhere between 80 and 90, 75 and 85, somewhere in that range. There are going to be random quizzes, things along those lines, and a comprehensive, cumulative, excuse me, final exam. Now, Oh, hold on, there's a question in the chat. Yay. Yay for the cumulative final exam. All right, excellent. Yes, covering everything that you're responsible for on the exam. Now, what I will say is that every exam counts. I expect you to be successful, but I also expect there to be a learning curve with this class, right? Maybe, you know, if chemistry was the only real science class you've taken before, and quite frankly, it's not a real science, you may be completely unprepared for the first exam and you may really bomb it. Or maybe you do really good on the first 3 exams, and then right before the 4th exam, grandma gets married in Vegas. And so you're gone for the whole weekend and you don't get the opportunity to study and you totally bomb it, but you recover and you finish strong. To encourage learning and retention of this information, you can take your lowest lecture exam and replace it with the final. So again, let's say, for instance, like we talked about, you get a 75 on the first exam and an 80 on the second and an 83 on the third, and you're really going. And then, like I said, grandma gets married in Vegas and you stumble with a 69, and then come back strong with an 89 as a result of that. And those are your 5 lecture scores. Your final exam, though, you finish strong and you get an 85 on it. That final exam counts as a grade on its own. But as I mentioned, you can also use it to replace your lowest lecture score. And just like that, you got 16 more points added to your score. Now, lab exams are worth different points, so all the lab exams count. And the final exam counts as a grade on its own. If you get 100s on all of the lecture exams, you still have to take the final. It still counts as a grade on its own. All right. I curve the grades. You have the opportunity to replace your lowest lecture score with the final. There are a few extra credit opportunities. I do not give outside extra credit assignments. If you're doing poor on the class, don't come to me and say, what can I do for extra credit? Because I'm not going to give you some essay to write, because if you're writing some essay, then you're not studying for the next material and you're going to bomb the next test. And then it just becomes a vicious cycle. But there's the science skills, there's the open labs, I curve it, there's things like the 5 for 5, and there are 15-point participation grade. It's not extra credit. For being here, being active in the learning process, you get 15 points of extra credit as, not extra credit, pardon, 15 points as a participation grade. As long as you're here on time, active in the learning process, you will maintain those 15 points. And that's what this class is about. This class is all about points. Again, using your yes and no tabs. How many people here play golf? Bunch of no's. All right. How many people here have heard of golf? All right. It's a little bit better there. Excellent. In golf, if I hit a 300-yard drive, there you go. Daniel, you play golf. If you hit a 300-yard drive, how many strokes does that count as? 1. If you hit a 2-inch putt, how many strokes does that count as? 1, right? When you play golf, strokes are strokes are strokes. In this class, points are points are points. 1 point on a homework counts the same as 1 point on a lab assignment, counts the same as 1 point on the final, counts the same as 1 point on a quiz and 1 point on a lecture exam, and so on and so forth. Your job in this class is to maximize your points. And how many points you accumulate during the course of the class is going to determine your grade. And it's the awesome thing about it. If everybody in this class gets 90% of the points or more, every single person in this class gets an A. No one person's grade in this class affects anybody else's. So work together to be successful and everybody can get the grade that they want. But at the end of the day, your points determine your grade. If after curving the grades, after replacing your lowest lecture score with the final, after getting your participation points, after getting your 15 points for going to the open lab, at the end of that, you have a 69.9% in this class. What is your grade? It is a D, because you didn't get 70% of the points. Because think about it, I know that seems harsh, but with all the curving, with all the extra credit, with all the participation, with all of that, if you still weren't able to get 70% of the points, then you truly didn't deserve that A. Because without the curve, without replacing your final, without the extra credit, you probably weren't even anywhere near that. So at the end of the day, ultimately your points determine your grade. The good news is it doesn't happen often. It is rare that someone falls that close, but every once in a while, unfortunately, it does. But you'll have your grades. You'll know exactly what you need to do to be successful. You can look at your grades, and hopefully everybody can do what they need to do in this class. All right, that's it. Let's do some more doom and gloom. By yes or no on the participation. Has anybody, let me clear that. Has anybody not taken the attendance quiz yet? If you have not taken the attendance quiz, say yes. If you have not taken the attendance quiz, you need to take the attendance quiz or you will not be able to add the class or you will be dropped from it. To go back to the quizzes tab, the access code is FIRST, all lowercase. Go take the one question attendance quiz to show me you are here. Because when I'm done with all this introduction, if you have not taken the attendance quiz, you are going to be dropped so I can add somebody else from the class. So if you've not done that yet, do so now. So that's one of the things. Again, 40 minutes in and already I'm losing my voice. Awesome. Because of the pace of this class, because of the challenges of doing this online, the classroom policy is that there's no makeup exams or quizzes. The quizzes are easy. If you're not here at the beginning of the class, if you're not here at the end of the lecture when we have a daily quiz and you miss that daily quiz, that's it. That's 5 points you're missing. There's no chance of getting that back. It shouldn't make or break your grade. The exams, on the other hand, are much more serious. What the classroom policy has to be that there are no makeup exams. However, if when looking at the schedule, you see that the third exam, lo and behold, grandma is getting married in Vegas, then let me know. I will make every attempt possible to be able to make an exception for you and have you be able to take that exam. But because of the pace of the class, because of our limitations of time, I can't guarantee that that can be provided for you. So I will make every attempt, but I can't promise it. So, and the sooner you let me know, the better. Obviously, it's hard to plan car accidents and things like that ahead of time, and I appreciate that. And if you are in a car accident and being rushed to the hospital, I shouldn't be the first person you email. But the sooner you contact me, the sooner I can try to work with you, and we'll try to make those accommodations. Speaking of accommodations, we have an excellent resource on campus, the DSPS program. If you need additional time or things along those lines, they are able to provide that for you. It is an excellent resource. Contact them. They will contact me. We can get all the paperwork done, and we can have that done as well. All right. Last doom and gloom. Actually, two more. Academic honesty policy. Again, American River College values academic honesty. Current policies prohibit dishonesty such as cheating, plagiarism, or knowingly furnishing false information onto the college. All members of the academic community are responsible for the academic integrity of American River College. Now, obviously, there's the obvious things. Having your cheat sheet or your phone or somebody knowledgeable next to you while you're taking the test is the obvious examples of these. But you are also going to be encouraged to work together in groups. And I encourage you to do all your activities, many of your activities, except the exams, obviously, in groups. However, when you're filling out the homework assignments, I don't want one page that have everybody's name on it. Or worse, I don't want 4 different answers photocopied for 4 different people. On the test, you are going to be responsible for putting the information in your own words. So get used to writing in your own words. Work together, come up with the right answer, but put it into your own words. Not only can you not have your smartphone No smart watches on during the exams, please. And again, no outside work. You must be on camera for the proctorio and all of those kind of things. And again, your rights as a student are linked there as well. Last doom and gloom. Obviously, the people who aren't here right now aren't hearing this, at least not hearing this live. But anybody who's not here today is going to get dropped from the class. Will lose their priority on the wait list. And it'll be the same thing on Thursday. If you are not here Thursday, there's going to be another attendance quiz. If you have not completed the attendance quiz by the end of the introduction, you will lose your spot in the class or lose your priority on the wait list. So it is important to be here today and Thursday. If you, for some reason, are going to be late on Thursday, email me and let me know so you don't get dropped. After that, I hope to have enrollment issues handled. In some instances, it may have to roll on to next week. So again, if I'm not able to add you today, come back on Thursday. Stay if you can to get the information. Come back on Thursday and we will hopefully be able to add more. And sometimes it goes to next week, but I'm hoping to be done with it by next week. Once we get enrollment issues handled, then at that point, this is college, you're adults, and you're responsible for your enrollment in this class. No, the attendance quiz will just be on the first two classes for this attendance purposes. Now there will be daily quizzes that could be at the beginning of class, but those are not going to drop you if you don't take them. You just lose the points on that. This is just so that I can get the people who want to be in the class into the class, and the people who aren't as motivated and aren't showing up, we can get rid of now. That's the point of these attendance quizzes. But once I get you enrolled in class, once enrollment is done, then you are on your own for that as far as handling your schedules. Maria, do you have a question?
Are there some lecture
I'm sorry, you're breaking up a little bit. I didn't quite catch that. Can you guys hear, or is it just me? Maria, maybe try typing it into the chat window. Well, she hopefully types that into the window. Let me answer another question that was there. So if you're on the wait list, I hope to add you today. I'll let you know in a few minutes, but if I'm not able to add you today, then yes, definitely come back on Thursday and I will try to add you then. Oh, great. Yes, they're on lecture material. So this, obviously, attendance quizzes are just to see who's here and who's not. The 5-point daily quizzes are either going to be on the material we covered on the last class, or it could be general information about that information we're going to cover that day. So at least that hopefully you've got some idea and looked ahead at what we may be covering. It would be either specific information about the previous lecture or maybe more general, generic information about the new stuff coming, or some combination there.
I have a question about the schedule.
Yes.
How accurate do you think it's going to be?
Very. As far as the tests, it's going to be very accurate. So as far as that goes, the lectures, there may be some flux in it, but I've taught this class enough, and now I've taught it. This will be my third time teaching it online. I think I've got it pretty honed to where we need it to be.
I have a question too.
Yes.
So are we going to go through the book chapter by chapter, or are we going to be jumping around? And part two of the same question, do you need us to read ahead before the lecture?
Great question. So I think for the most part, we are going through the book in order, but that's not intentional. I just think that it tends to be written in the way that tends to go on. I see your questions about the quizzes. I can show you guys where those things are in a minute. But the short answer is on the tabs, on the quizzes tabs back in Canvas. So go back to Canvas and look at under there, and you should be able to find it. As far as reading ahead of time in the textbook, what I would encourage you to do is to, hopefully at this point, you know your study techniques. Some people need to read the whole chapter because they need to see how all the pieces fit together for the information to make sense of them. Some people, when they read the whole chapter, are overwhelmed by all that information. And so in that case, it's better to just focus on the material we're going to be covering. you have my lecture slides. So you have an outline of what we're going to be talking about so that you can focus on that material. And remember, your textbook is a resource. It's not a romance novel that needs to be read from cover to cover. So it's really about your study habits. If you get overwhelmed by too much information, then you don't necessarily have to start in the textbook. Look at the outlines before lecture. And then after lecture, if you, for instance, didn't quite understand mitosis, then you can go to the textbook and just read the part about mitosis. Okay. There was another hand up too. Laura, did you get your question answered? Hernandez?
I'm not sure if you already went over it, but the daily quizzes, are they going to be multiple choice, or is it going to vary like one day?
So no, the daily quizzes are 5 points. You're going to have 5 minutes to complete them. And they're all multiple choice, and it's not even on proctorial. It's just going to be a quick thing on those days. You'll have 5 minutes to complete it. We'll start the lecture at 8:10 or 12:10. And so yeah, so just 5 minutes in that. And yes, you will need to come onto Canvas to get the access code for it.
Okay, thank you.
The access code is first for the attendance quiz, FIRST.
One more
sorry.
question. Sorry,
Yeah.
one more question. So I haven't purchased the textbook yet because I'm still on the wait list.
Okay.
But I know
So
that you
don't.
said that we can purchase it through Canvas. Can you, I don't know if you were going to, but if
Yep.
you could show me where that is, that would
We
be
will work through that. Absolutely. Let me
Perfect.
finish
Thank
this
you.
and we'll get to the rest of that.
awesome.
I wanted to finish off these last few things. So again, we were talking about enrollment. I'll try to get as many people in the next couple of days as we can. And then hopefully by next week we'll be completed. After that, this is college, you're adults, you're responsible for your schedule. Remember, a class like this, you can only take 3 times in the entire district. So it is important to keep track of your attendance in that. So to drop without a W, full refund, be able to get, not count as one of your 3 attempts, you have to drop by January 29th. Although you have till April 18th to drop with a W. Proctor is primarily used for the lecture and lab exams. It is being used for the chemistry quiz. And also I have a proctorial quiz, but that proctorial quiz is a chance to get familiar with proctorial so that you know how it works. All right. All right, that's the doom and gloom stuff. The rest of this stuff here is just things to help you to be successful in this class. Don't miss class, don't skip any work. You are expected to be here on time. Not only will you lose points for potentially lack of participation, for losing out on quizzes, but like I said, we're going to be doing group activities in here, so it's important to be there as well. And it can be important to do activities even if you're not turning them in for an assignment. As I mentioned, I really love our lab manual, and at the beginning of each unit of our lab manual is a pre-lab. Some of those pre-labs we'll actually be doing as an assignment, but if you look at them, their identification, their vocabulary, if you actually took the time to fill out the pre-lab, it would be a great study tool to help you to be successful for the units as we move forward. Again, complete all your lab assignments, turn them in on time. You either have to purchase it through Mastering, or you can, or through Canvas, or you can get it in a bundle. We'll talk about that in a second. Complete the activities, turn them in on time. Losing half credit for a homework assignment adds up. It usually happens more in the classroom, but I've had students in the past who got A's on all the exams, but he got a B in the class because he never turned in any of the homework. So make sure you're doing the homework, make sure you're turning it in on time. It's free points for studying, and again, it helps you develop good study habits. Your success in this class is going to be solely dependent on how much time you can focus and the wise use of that time. It isn't just overall time. This is not like any class that many of you have taken before. If you've taken chemistry or psychology class, when you have a test on Monday, you can just lock the doors on Sunday and spend 12 hours on Sunday just studying for that chemistry quiz or that chemistry exam. And you can get away with that because on that unit of the chemistry, there's only 3 or 4 big things. And as long as you can master those 3 to 4 big things, you're going to be fine. But that's not the case in this class. This class isn't for big concepts. It's 100 little ones. And you cannot sit down for 12 hours and learn 100 things in a row. It's impossible. So you need to spread your time out. You need to be efficient with your time. You need to be smart with your time. Steal study time when you can to be successful in this class. Take advantage of your groups. You're going to be working in groups, study together, work together. You don't have to meet outside. I will be setting up discussion boards for your groups. You can set up your own discussion boards for that as well. And take advantage of me. Come to my office hours. My office hours are going to be 11 to 12 right before this class. So it's a perfect opportunity to come and to ask questions. Caitlin, you had a question?
Yes, so in terms of the atlas, I saw that like they had pictures and diagrams, but for myself, I like when I'm able to fill them out. Is there like a fill out portion of the atlas, or would you recommend getting a different one if that's the case?
So again, as I mentioned, I think that has to do with people's study habits. There are some great coloring books, for instance, if you're a tactile learner. There's some amazing A&P. This is one that I have, A&P coloring books or things like that that you can have that can be more tactile. Making your own flashcards or something that will work. So things along those lines, I would recommend that. Catherine, no, when I set the groups for the activity, well, per unit, like for instance, when we do the bones, you will be given a specific group, but there's nothing to say that you can't form other groups outside of that.
I have a question.
Yes.
And I was wondering, so let's say we have a lecture on Tuesday. By Thursday lecture, we have things that are due on Canvas, right?
Correct.
That we just covered. Okay. And
Yeah,
then
in fact, you'll have, well, so again, for instance, as you look at the assignments that are due coming up, where's my whiteboard? There it is. So as we talked about, so for instance, this Unit 1 review, we're going to start covering the materials that is going to be on that today. So we'll start talking about those things, but it's not due till next week. So again, there's going to be, you have a list of an understanding of when things are going to be due. And that's the other thing that I wanted to show you as well. I don't ever want to get an email from someone asking when an assignment is due for 3 reasons. Primary one is, again, not only do we have a tentative schedule, shows when the exams and what the concepts we'll be covering on those days are, but if you look at the course summary underneath here, it tells you what assignments and when they are due. So we have all of our assignments and when they are due here on this course summary list that we have here. So notice we can see our first lab exam and lecture exam is February 4th, and it shows me all the assignments that are due before then and when they're due. So you have it there. Maximilian, that's a great question. My understanding is a decision has not been made on the fall yet. Summer definitely will be online. I can tell you that right now. But in all honesty, fall probably will be online, but there is some hope that it won't be. All right.
So since we're talking, do you recommend that we just take it immediately after this semester or wait to see about the possibility of it not being online?
Well, I think taking A&P in the summer is stupid. So I teach it during the summer, and I can tell you for a fact that it is ridiculous. It's again, as I mentioned, what helps people to be successful in this class is time. And the problem with summer is you get the information twice as fast and you have half the time to study. So it's not conducive. And again, some people are good at cramming and purging information, but most of you going into the medical field need and want this information moving forward. So it doesn't do you any good to cram and purge and not retain it. So but again, I can't tell people what to do, but that's my own personal opinion. But again, I'm biased. My entire academic career, graduate and undergraduate, I never took a summer school class. So there you go. Ervik.
Well, my question is, how do we submit assignments? For example, the Unit 1, we just fill these questions and then scan them and submit them?
So I will show you that in just a moment. Absolutely. So questions on any other questions on the schedule before we move on, because those are the other resources I want to show you. Again, you all took the quiz today. The quizzes are here. Here's where your attendance quiz is. Notice today after class, our chemistry quiz becomes available and is due. So we have that there as well. Proctorio quiz, student info sheets are here, all of those things. But as we were talking about before, where you're going to spend a lot of your time is here in the modules. So to answer your question, here in the modules, we have, for instance, this is where the lab safety form or some of the other assignments are, Proctorio. These are the proper scans for the exam, all of those things here. Some study tools, some websites that I've found or other students have provided that have been really useful. This is also where your link to the Science Success Center is, the link to the Open Lab is. My YouTube channel is here. But here is where you will turn in your Unit 1 review. So under Section 1, in the assignments, here your Unit 1 review. You can print it out and take pictures of the pages. You can do it as a PDF. You can scan it and turn it into a PDF. Whatever you're going to do, you're going to take those pages, you'll come here and you'll choose a file from your computer and submit it here. The nice thing about this is you're already logged on to Canvas. So when you submit it to me, it puts it in a unique folder for you. So I know who submitted all of the assignments. And so you have that opportunity to submit those assignments here. So the modules is going to be where you're going to go to get to submit those assignments. So notice for Unit 1, we have for Section 1, Unit 1, Unit 3, and Unit 4 reviews. Here's where the lecture slides are located. Some additional handouts will be located here. In this case, like I said, I know histology is something a lot of people aren't familiar with. This handout is a great introductory handout to histology. There's no assignment on it, but it's a good study tool. As I mentioned, the unit review keys are posted here so that you have an opportunity to do that. And this is also where you'll do the lab simulators. Like I said, Labster and Physiox, and we'll talk about Physiox in just a minute. And all their due dates are here as well. Lastly, I am an amazing artist. And so any drawings that I do, I'll take screenshots of, and I can post them here on our lecture images as well. So if we're talking about some process and I draw some illustration, I'll save that so that you guys don't have to write that down as well. So most of the resources you're going to need are here under your modules. All right. The last thing that I want to show, actually two more quick things. Your grades are here. Discussion boards are here. Right now, I've opened up a water cooler. If you have questions that you want to ask for each other, this is your opportunity to do that. Form study groups, do things along those lines. You have that here, your grades and things along those lines. And this will also be where I'll put our discussion boards for the groups when we're doing those. The other thing on here is the Mylab and Mastering. Now, this gets back to one of the other questions that was asked before about purchasing access to the Mylab and Mastering. If you already have a different textbook or some other resource and you just need the online resource, you can do this here. If you just want an electronic version of the textbook, it can be purchased here as well. And every single student in this class right now has a free 2-week trial. So you can come and open your Mylab and Mastering and get a free 2-week trial that gives you access to all of the resources that you can see. Now, I don't have student access to this, so mine's going to look slightly different, but I can still show you some of these things and what they're going to look like. So here we go. So there are two main things that you're going to want to use in the Mastering A&P. The first is an electronic version of the textbook. This electronic version of the textbook is a very, very powerful resource. You can actually download chapters to your iPad or your iPhone to be able to take them offline, to be able to use them that way. And it is a static e-text. So if you put bookmarks or things along that in here, it will keep those bookmarks. So as you can see a bookmark, you can add bookmarks, you can take away bookmarks, you can, on the page, you can highlight information. That's not what I wanted to do. Where's my highlighter? That's still not what I want to do. Looks like they've changed the textbook. There used to be a way. Okay, here's the menu. We can do this. You can add history, so you can see the previous things that you've seen. You can see the previous notes that I've made in this case. If we come back to this one here, you can see where I've highlighted information. You can see where I've put a note in here so that I can provide that piece of information or write a note or something along those lines. So I can say, for instance, and it's a dynamic, so it goes to lots of different other resources. It's a great, great resource that I strongly recommend you play with and take advantage of, especially if you like e-texts. However, where you're going to spend a lot of your time is in the study area. When you go to the study area, there are a couple ways you can access the study area. One of the most important things in the study area is your Physiox. Physiox is another one of your lab simulators. So when you go to here, for instance, later in this section, we're going to be doing some of the Physiox exercises. We're going to be doing activity 1 about movement across a membrane. So when you do this, there are some pre-lab questions you're going to answer. You're going to go through the instructions, read the introduction, take a pre-quiz. Shucks, I got it wrong. All right, fill in the answers. And notice as I go through this, I have the opportunity to submit. You're submitting this to a lab report, and you're going to want to submit all of your activities to the lab report. And then you just follow directions. Drag the 20 molecular weight cutoff membrane to the membrane holder. Excellent. Next, increase the sodium chloride to 9 millimolar and dispense. And it has fun noises and all these different dynamic activities you're going to go through step by step. It's not hard, but it's just a little time consuming. Again, saving your work as you go. There is a quiz you're going to take at the end of this. There are some review sheets you're going to fill out at the end of this. And at the end of this, you're going to have a lab report. Now, notice my lab report isn't that impressive because I really didn't do anything. But what you're going to do is print this lab report. The way you print this lab report is, notice as I scroll down to the bottom, printable, savable version. Doesn't really matter that you entered your name. And print as. Now, if you want to print out the papers and then take photocopies of them, you can do that, but that seems really silly. The easiest thing to do is save it as a PDF. When you save this as a PDF, you can save it right to your desktop. Boom. And then when we go back to our, oops, where is it? Ah, perfect. Hold on. When we go back to here, so when we go to our modules, notice under module 1, there it is, lab simulator. Physiox exercise 1. I can submit the assignment. I can find that file from my desktop, Physiox exercise 1, activity 1, and I can submit it. Now, notice as it reads here, oh, hey, horseshoes and confetti and all that. Physiox has 5 different activities. Each one gives you its own lab report. So again, if you want to print out the pages, you're going to kill a small tree to do that. But if you save them as a PDF, you can come here and submit them. Now, since there's 5, you can submit them all at once, or like I did, if you just want to do one today and one tomorrow, then just come back here and resubmit the next one. I can see all of your previous submissions. So if I submit a new file here, it's not going to delete the first one. So you can submit them all at once, or you can submit them at different times. Great question, Catherine. No, you can't save in the middle of an activity. Now, remember, there's 5 activities. So you can do the first activity and then come back later and do the third. And then if you want to come back and do the second, and then you want to do the fifth, and then you want to do the fourth, or any order that way, you can do that. So this is one that you really can't do in a group. right? Again, in the olden days, if you all wanted to sit around the computer and open a bottle of wine and do that, you can do that. But again, we have to quarantine, so that isn't something you're going to be able to do successfully. And remember, you have to submit them in your own words. So it isn't something that you could successfully do that way as well. So there are graded assignments from this study area from the Physiox. But there are a lot of other really important resources in here as well. Again, you are going to be tested on the bones without ever holding a bone in your hand. And that's where something like this comes in useful. This is your practice anatomy lab. So for instance, when we're studying the axial skeleton, we can see a skull. We can highlight the different areas of the skull or features of the skull that way. There's all these different pictures. We can actually rotate the skull. So we can see it from different views, from the bottom, from the top. Manipulate it that way. Show the gallery. No, I don't want to do that. Show the labels, what I meant. So you can see the labels, put the labels away. And when you're feeling particularly frisky, you can do a quiz where it shows a picture and you have to guess what that is. And you can check your answer and, hey, what do you know? I got it correct. And if you're feeling particularly frisky, there's a lab practical which shows you a bone feature and you actually have to write in the answer. So there's a lot of resources here on this that aren't necessarily things that you're going to be turning in for a grade, but are things that can help you to be successful. So I see there's some of these. So yes, so no, lab manual is completely separate. The lab manual is a different, so Pearson is who provides, go back to the study area. Pearson is who provides the textbook and this online resource. So all of these resources like the Physiox, which are graded assignments, the practice anatomy lab, there's some videos, things like that. And if you don't want to hunt and peck, one of the easiest things to do is to study by chapter. Notice if you study by chapter, and let's take one of the more interesting ones like the skeletal system, when you click on this, it shows you the parts of the textbook that are available to direct your learning, flashcard maker, art labeling activities, other videos and things like that. All the resources are here by this as well. So this is an area where there's a lot of resources. And I said, everybody gets a 2 free week trial to this. So you can get on there, try it. And if you enjoy it, purchase it. If you've already purchased the textbook bundle, you have a code that gives you access to all of these things as well. All right. So again, the modules are going to be where you find the assignments and where you turn the assignments in. And then it's either going to be in your lab manual, or a lot of this stuff's going to be either these lab simulators like Labster, or the Physiox, which is in the Mastering A&P. All right, questions on any of that?
Yes, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So with when we're in like on the Canvas, that will also tell us like what assignments that are due in that Mylab and Mastering, correct?
Yeah, so yes. So if you think about it, if you look, let's go back. And again, so I find in the syllabus, but actually if you go to your calendar, it's on your calendar as well. But at the bottom of the syllabus is a list of everything that's due. So notice for today, the only thing that was due is the attendance quiz. Yeah, you've taken that. For Thursday, we have another attendance quiz. There's a chemistry quiz due by the beginning of class, lab safety due by the beginning of class, the 5 for 5 meetings due by the beginning of class, proctorio quiz due by the beginning of class.
Okay.
The Unit 1 review. And if you're not sure what it is, notice when you click on it, it takes you right here. Tells you what it is and where to be able to submit.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Good. Yep. Great question. The A&P applications manual, there isn't an assignment directly in that, when they put these textbook bundles together, they sometimes throw in some additional carrots, and that's one of them. It's a free book that they put in. Some instructors like it because it's more diagnostic. So especially for those of you looking to go into nursing, it's kind of gives some real world clinical examples. I think it is an excellent study tool, but especially for those of you who have a more clinical mindset, but I'm not going to be giving any assignments from that. All right.
Okay, I actually have another question. For the bundle, what I'm trying to find the laboratory and the photographic atlas of histology. I want that bundled together because I actually want that physical book.
Okay.
I've been looking for it on the ARC, but like it doesn't really show a picture, or I can't see like
So-
the bundle part.
The lab manual bundle one is the Ammerman. So one of the bundles is for Mylab, that's the textbook. The Ammerman one is the lab manual.
Ammerman one, and it should be okay. I see right here because I'm in your email looking a 3rd edition. Okay, because when I click on it, I see the Exploring Anatomy and Philosophy Laboratory, but I don't see where it says it gives you that book.
Well, if it's a bundle, the bundle comes with the atlas. So that's what comes in it.
Okay. Because I see it, but it says platform access card. Does that mean it's online?
I don't think so. My understanding is you should get a physical copy of the lab manual and a physical copy of the Histology Atlas. What I would recommend is I will do it myself, but I would also encourage you to contact the bookstore for clarification if you're having trouble figuring it out.
Okay, I will do that. Okay, thank you.
I did call the bookstore a couple times, and every time I called, there was no answer, and their mailbox is full.
Okay, I will try to contact them, see if I can get through as an instructor, and see if I can get any clarification on that. But there should be, like I said, there should be 2 textbook bundles you can choose from. One that has a physical copy of the book and one that just has the electronic version of the book. And so you have to pick one of those. And then the other required thing should be the Ammerman lab manual.
Yeah, I don't know if this is really helpful, but I did buy the textbook bundle, and then I bought the textbook itself and everything. So because I had emailed you regarding like which one is, you know, the textbook, which one is the ebook, because when you're like on the site for ARC, it doesn't really like describe what's in each bundle. It just says like, you know, here's your ebook bundle, here's your textbook bundle, then here's like the text itself. So I had to like kind of, you know, clarifying which one. But I did go to ARC, I did go to the big bookstore, I did pick it up, and what came was like, you know, like 4-5 books, like, you know, all together and everything. And it has like
should be what's listed in the bundle. I mean, on the syllabus.
Right.
The syllabus lists what's in there. Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Cool. Excellent. All righty. So here's what we are going to do. I think that is most of the introduction. I know we went through that fast, but this is being recorded. And like I said, then I'm happy to continue to answer questions on this. But I think what we are going to do now is, I think I've covered most of the introductory stuff that I wanted to. So I want to get into the lecture because we're at 1:15. However, before we do that, I have to handle our first enrollment thing. So what we're going to do is let's go back to this page. And I can now get rid of this. Oops, no, not that. That. So what we will do is we're going to take our first break. And we will come back at 1:30, take a little bit of a longer break because I'm going to need some time during this break. So we will restart lecture at that point and recording. I have to put myself that reminder because otherwise I start talking without recording, and that's a bad thing. Give me 5 minutes and I will see. So if you are on the wait list trying to enroll, what I will do is I will figure out how many I'm able to add and then who I'm able to add, and then we'll talk to those people and we will take care of any adding today. Again, as I mentioned, if I'm not able to add you today, I encourage you to stick around so that you can continue to get the information, know what is going to be expected of you, and so you can be successful if I'm able to add you Thursday. I'm going to do the best I can to scare some people off with the lecture. So we'll see what happens with that. However, I know if you have to try to go to add other classes or something along those lines, the fact that you took the enrollment quiz maintains your spot on the wait list. So if you can't stay, I understand if you have to go. I encourage you to stay, but still come 12 o'clock on Thursday if your name isn't one of the ones that's called off, and I'll do the best that I can to try to add more on Thursday. All right. So any questions on that? Martin, did you have a question?
Yes, for the people that are on the wait list, do you want us to stay on or are you just going to contact us?
Yeah, if you, what'll happen is, let's do it this way. I will, let's take a break. So go stretch, get some caffeine, whatever it is you need. I will look at the list, see who I'm able to add. And what I'll do is I'll write the names here of the people who are able to add. So if you see your name, then what you're going to need to do. So here, let's do it this way, since we're talking about it here. Names below. Here's what you will need to do. If I write your name here during the break, then what you are going to need to do is email me with your student ID. And then what will happen is I will email you back a permission to add number. All right. When you get that permission to add number, you have 24 hours to use it. If you do not use it within 24 hours, you will lose your priority. And I will add somebody else. So if you haven't signed up and you're not on the roster by tomorrow morning or by Thursday morning, then you will lose your priority and I will add somebody else. Remember also, when you sign up, pay. Remember, you only have, I think it's like 48 hours to pay. If you don't pay, you will get dropped and I can't add you from that. All right, so during the break, I'll figure out who is here. I'll write the names here. And if your name is here, then email me. If your name's not here, again, doesn't mean you're not going to get in the class. It just means I can't add you today. So I encourage you to stick around and stay for the rest of the information. But if not, if you have to go, then the fact that you signed that you did the admissions quiz, the attendance quiz, means that you'll maintain your spot. All right. Any questions on that?
All right. Thank you.
Let's actually make it 1:35 now because I've been talking for a while, and I just want to make sure. So 1:35 is when we will come back from break. All right. Any other questions? All right. I will see you guys in 15 minutes. Thank you for catching that. All right, excellent. So away we go. I have also taught the 102 class version of this and the introductory class. And one of the things I'm always entertained about on that class is we can spend a month talking about these materials. And on the first test, I can ask these questions and I'm always shocked by the number of people who get them wrong. So let's get it out of the way right now. What is the definition of anatomy?
The study of the body.
Okay, and more specifically, what parts of the body? How about the body? Sung, did you have can you clarify more?
Structure.
Yeah, exactly. It's about the structure. So it's the study of the structures of the bodies. Oops, why is that not typing? There we go. Of the structures of the body, the bits and pieces, right? How is that different from physiology?
Physiology is the function.
Yeah, exactly, is the study of the function. I know there are some universities who separate anatomy and physiology into their own separate classes, and I'm very thankful we don't do that because that's never made sense to me. Because if you were truly just studying anatomy, then you'd just be given a list of names to memorize with no reason or rationale as to why you were doing that. And how can you possibly talk about the function of something if you can't identify the parts? So I love in this class that we combine them together because they do. The anatomy affects the function. The structure affects the function. The function affects the structure. The two go hand in hand, and it makes perfect sense to study it that way. However, There are many levels and many subdivisions to this. Let's take anatomy, for instance. This is just a small subset of the anatomy subdivisions, right? We have things like gross anatomy, which are the things that are really, really icky, right? Cytology, which is the study of the cells. Gross anatomy is really not the study of the icky stuff. What is gross anatomy? Anyone? Is it the icky things?
Study of large organs.
Yeah. What would the opposite of gross anatomy be?
Micro.
Yeah, microscopic anatomy. Excellent. What's surface anatomy?
Skin and stuff on the inside. I mean, on the outside.
Well, but be careful though. So skin is definitely related to it, but remember the study of the skin is the field of dermatology, right? So surface anatomy is more than that. And you've got it kind of the right, I'd say, things near the surface, near the top. Obviously the skin is part of it. But if I started showing you pictures of Arnold Schwarzenegger in his heyday, would we be able to identify the muscles, for instance, on his body, even though they're not looking through the skin, poking through the skin? Yeah, or if I showed you pictures of Kate Moss, could you count her ribs and be able to study the bones that way? So surface anatomy are things that can be seen or felt from the surface. So we have, and again, this is just a small subsection. You don't have to write all these down, but hopefully it makes some sense. And if we can subdivide anatomy like that, can we do the same thing for physiology? This is the part where you all enthusiastically say yes.
Yes.
Enthusiastically. So let's try that again. So since we can do this with anatomy, can we do the same thing with physiology?
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
There we go. Excellent. That's what I like to hear. Absolutely. And so absolutely we can do the same thing with physiology as well. Yes. Excellent. Now, it's not just about having these things, but organizing them as well, right? All living things are made up from common elements, and those elements are arranged in a hierarchy, right? If nothing else, we have learned a tremendous amount about the governmental hierarchy over the past couple of years, right? We have the president, then there's the vice president, and the third in charge, I think is like a duke or something like that. And then there's other roles. I don't know. Nobody understands politics. Let's talk about something much more important, football, right? There's definitely a hierarchy in football. You have the head coach, and then you have the offensive and defensive coordinators, and each underneath them, you have all this organization. And so a hierarchy is these levels of organization. And we can do the exact same thing with the body as well. We can identify the components of the body into a hierarchy. So let's do that. So if we were to break the body down to its simplest basic bits, what is the simplest basic most bits we can study the body at?
Atoms and molecules.
Right. So from the simplest level, that simplest metal, it would be, would be a chemical level. Right. At that chemical level, we are studying things like atoms and molecules and things along those lines. If we were to take a bucket of these things and put them together, what would we get as a result of that? What would be the next level up?
Cells.
Yeah, exactly.
Cellular level.
Exactly. It'd be cells. Now, if you have a bucket of chemicals, does that mean you truly have a cell? No, it's obviously a little bit more sophisticated than that. In particular, there's something specifically different about the cellular level than the chemical level. What is that? What do we talk about with the cellular level that we don't talk about at the chemical level?
Structure.
Okay, obviously some of it is an increase in structure. It's more complicated in its structure, right? What else?
DNA?
Well, okay, DNA can't, but DNA is a molecule, right?
Nucleus.
Tissue. So I like what you're doing. So when we think of cellular level, also in this cellular level, we have things that are called organelles, that are the components that make it up. So when we talk about cells, we talk about organelles. But when we talk about a cell and we talk about water or sugar, there you go, Catherine's got it. Cells are alive. This is the simplest, lowest level where we talk about having life. How do we define life?
Organelles.
Okay, but do everything that's alive have an organelle?
No.
No, bacteria, are they alive?
Yes.
Yeah, but they don't have an organelle. So how do we define life? How do I look at a rock and know that it's not alive, but I look at a broccoli and know that it is? They both move about the same speed. So how do I know one's alive and one isn't?
Maybe like reproduction, like we're able to like reproduct.
There you go. Those are the kind of characteristics we associate with life. Growth, reproduction, ability to maintain homeostasis, right? Chemical reactions, respond to their environment. There's all these things that we learned about that are the criteria for life, and absolutely cells are the first level that we get those in. Now, we take these cells and get a whole bucket of them again, and when we put them together, we get the next level. What is the next level of our hierarchy?
Tissue.
Tissues, absolutely. And again, that tissue level. There are rules. Is a bucket of cells going to be sufficient to be considered a tissue?
No, only just the specialized cells that do the same function.
Okay, I like that. Excellent. So tissues, to be tissues, obviously it has to be a group of cells. And those group of cells, notice, have to be similar, not identical, but similar in function. And is there another way that they could be similar as well?
In structure.
In structure, there you go. So to have a tissue, you have to have cells that are similar in function or similar in structure. Notice, not identical. Not identical in function, identical in structure, but they have to be similar. And when you put that group of cells together, you get tissues. Tissues are used to make what? Organs. And again, are there rules?
Yes.
If I have a big, huge slab of muscle tissue and I put another slab of muscle tissue on it, do I suddenly have an organ? What do you think?
No.
No, I just have more tissue. So obviously I need multiple tissues. How many? How many different types of tissues do I need to make an organ?
At least 2.
Yeah, there you go, exactly. 2 or more different tissues that work together for a similar function. Or towards a similar goal, let's say that. They don't have to have the same function. Two or more. What's the largest organ of your body? Well, I know the largest one of mine.
Your skin.
Yeah, your skin, absolutely, exactly. Your skin. And your skin is essentially made of 2 different tissue types. You have an epithelial tissue, you have some connective tissues, right? And it's the biggest organ in the body, and it's just made with a couple different tissues. Organs, of course, are used to make what?
Organ systems.
Excellent. And how many different organ systems do we have?
12.
Wasn't it like
12 or 13?
Which one? 12, 13? 21? 13? All right, let's put 13. See if that's correct later. Different ones. Excellent. And of course, when you put all those organ systems together, what do you get?
Organism.
A human.
Yeah, an organism or an individual. Individual or an organization, an organism level. All right. This is how it works. Can our hierarchy continue higher from this point?
Yeah.
Yeah. Individuals form families, form clans, form countries, societies, religions, right? At that point, we're pretty much in sociology. We're no longer in biology anymore, but technically it can continue upwards. Now, our goal in this class is going to be the sweet spot where we want to be is right here. We want to spend all our time talking about organs and organ systems. The problem is, to understand these organs and organ systems, we need to know a little something about tissues. And to understand tissues, we need to know a little something about cells, and to understand cells, we need to know a little something about the chemical level. So we are going to get a rapid, right, baptism by gunfire into understanding this beginning levels, talking about chemistry, talking about cells, talking about tissues. And we're going to do that over the next month or two. And then we're going to lay the foundation for the rest of 430 and all of 431. So most of 430 and all of 431 is going to be up here at the organ and organ system level, but we need to build some foundation to get up to that. I do teach 431. However, my goal in this class is not to just prepare you for my 431 class. I should prepare you for anybody's 431 class. But while the schedule has not been finalized, the expectation is if you teach 430 at a particular time on a particular day, then the next semester you should teach 431. So I anticipate teaching 431 from noon to 4:30, Tuesdays and Thursdays in the fall, but the fall schedule hasn't been finalized yet, so I don't know for certain. All right, I've done an amazing job. And again, as I said, I have those amazing artistic skills of showing that, but we also have the pretty pictures from your textbook that shows these things as well. So here we start out at the chemical level to the cellular level, tissues, organs, organ system, and organismal or individual level. And so again, that is our game plan for really all of 430 and 431. Now, I feel bad because I've been talking for a tremendously long period of time, and this is a hard class, and it's going to be a rough semester. Normally, I would have you all over for milk and cookies, but again, we're quarantining. So instead, what's going to happen is that I will be standing out in my front yard with big bags of cookies that have already been pre-made and have been vacuum sealed and have been sitting for a week in the fridge so that they stay fresh, but so that all the bacteria and stuff dies. And after class, everybody is encouraged to come over to my house and pick up a big bag of cookies. Now, class gets done by 12:35. So how many people should I expect to my house by, say, 1? Of course, I'm not kidding. Look, I just drew you a map. What more do you need? Ariel doesn't think you're going to be able to make it. Alyssa doesn't either. Why not? I've given you a map. It's even exactly what my house looks like. I have no windows.
No direction.
No time.
I've given you streets. Yeah, exactly. So that's the problem. I've given you this map, but there's no context to it, right? One of the challenges to anatomy and physiology is that really biology in general, but anatomy and physiology and genetics in particular, when you learn it, it's like learning another language. It has its very own vocabulary to it, right? And we need that precise vocabulary so that it makes sense, right? You can't get to my house based on this because there's no directional terms. You have no north, south, east, west. As someone mentioned, there's no labels for the names of the streets or any other kind of landmarks or anything that way. And while that means you're going to miss out on a couple cookies, it's a much more serious issue if it is some doctor calling some specialist across the country, talking to them about your medical issue. If they're going across the country to talk to some specialist, you want those doctors to be able to talk to each other in a meaningful way so they can describe your precise problem and they can discuss how to be done with it. And just like driving directions, it starts with an appropriate map. The same way to know how to get to my house, you need a map of the world to start with. We need a map of the body to start to understand that. And when we do that, we call that anatomical position. How many people here have heard of anatomical position before? See several hands up. Anybody want to demonstrate it for us? All those hands went down. No one wants to demonstrate anatomical position for us? How about just describing it then?
Basically, like
You're
oh, go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead, Laura.
Go ahead.
Like standing upright and face forward and like your hands out, everything forward.
There you go. I like that. Not quite out as far as you did it, but absolutely. You've got the right idea. The key to anatomical position is this right here. You were standing upright. And I would say, again, this is one of those great things for your textbook. This person isn't doing the perfect job. If you look closely, her right foot is turned out. So in this case, the feet should actually be both facing forward, hands to the sides, palms facing forward, face facing forward, everything presented this way. This is our map of the world. And so when we talk about our map of the world, this is the map we are going to use for that. However you talk about your body, whether it's someone actually standing like this, waiting for a bus, or your patient is curled up a ball on a floor, or your patient has been chopped up into pieces and spread across the lawn. These are the terms we are going to use when we talk about the body. This is our globe. All right. And just like you have a starting point of the globe, you then have to identify the continents and the countries and the states. We need to do that same thing as well. Now, as I've said many times in this class, not this one for you, but I will say it plenty of times, one of the things I love about anatomy and physiology is that it's hard. And why I like that is I don't have to be tricky. I can be very straightforward with you about what you're going to be responsible for and tell you X, Y, and Z is going to be on the exam because I know you're going to have to put a lot of time into doing it. The other advantage of having a hard class is that the information is obvious. If we spend half a lecture talking about something, that concept is important and it is almost certainly going to be on the exam. This is going to be the one exception. This slide is only going to be on the screen for about 3 minutes. But depending on how far behind we get in this first section, this slide could be as much as half of your first lab exam. You need to know your regional terms of your body, and you need to know them yesterday. We are going to use these appropriate terms again and again and again, right? One of the reasons this is important because right up here on my thigh, what is the regional term for my thigh?
Femoral.
Femoral, excellent. There happens to be a big, large bone. In fact, it's the largest bone in your body found in that thigh region. What do you think it's called?
Femur.
There's a large blood vessel that passes through the thigh region. What do you think that's called?
Your femoral artery.
Femoral artery, excellent. There is a big, large muscle group found on the anterior part of your leg. What is that called?
Quadriceps.
Yeah, it's the quadriceps, but it's the quadriceps femoris. One of the muscles of the quadriceps femoris is the rectus femoris, and so on and so forth. You need to know these terms, so learn them. There's a couple pictures here. They're in your textbook. You're in the lab manual. And again, I tend to want to give study guides to help to focus the information, but there's no point in giving you a study guide for this because you need to know all of them. You need to know all your regional terms, all your directional terms. So I'm not going to write them out for you a second time. Now, again, I have to work on my examples because usually we're on campus when we're talking about this. And I talk about how it's useful to know where Sacramento is, and it's useful to know where Auburn is. But you also need to know their relationship to each other. And so not only do we need to know the names of the areas, but we need to know how they relate to each other. Things like north, south, east, and west. Of course, in the body, we don't use terms like north, south, east, and west. Instead, we use terms like these on the board here. And much like north isn't as meaningful by itself, but makes much more sense when you talk north and south, Most of these work in pairs as well. Like the first two. When we talk about this first pair, lateral and medial, what does lateral mean?
To the side.
Away from the
Right.
center.
Yeah, and more specifically, away from the center, away from the midline. You have an imaginary line that divides your body into two equal and opposite halves, known as your midline. And lateral means away from the midline, away from that center. And so then, of course, medial means what?
Towards the center.
Right. So for instance, if I were to ask you to describe the relationship of your eyes versus your nose, what term would you say? Your eyes are what in relation to your nose?
Lateral.
Lateral. Right? If not, please see a doctor immediately.
Mhm.
All right. Excellent. Your eyes are lateral to your nose. And that would be a perfectly way of describing the relationship. Or you could switch it around. Say your nose is medial to your eyes. Is there another term on this list we could have put in here instead of lateral that would also be correct?
Superior to?
Yeah, the eyes are also superior to the nose. Or I could flip it around and say the nose was what to the eyes?
Inferior.
Inferior.
Excellent. So what does superior mean?
Above.
Right, towards the top. Inferior means towards the bottom. Excellent. So we have those terms, superior and inferior, medial and lateral, right? We also have terms anterior and posterior. What does anterior mean?
Front.
And posterior means?
Behind.
Behind, exactly. Posterior is where your posterior is, right? So again, if you think about it, if we draw a person and we draw them in profile, and we always assume anatomical position, so their feet are going out this way, their nose is coming out this way. Right. Give them an eye, give them a smile. All right, posterior is on the posterior. So we start to get these cardinal positions. Let me use smaller font for this. That's maybe too small. So posterior is to the back, anterior is to the front, superior is to the top, inferior is to the bottom. Excellent. But here's the problem. One of the most important problems you will learn in this class is that anatomists hate you. There are many ways they show this hate, but there are two in particular that are frustrating. The first is they make rules, for instance, like a rule on naming or a rule on identification, and then they break those rules all the time. The other way they show their disdain for you is by having numerous names for the exact same thing. And here's a perfect example. In humans, there is a term here on this list that is completely identical and means the exact same thing as anterior. And what is that term?
Ventral.
Ventral. Ventral and anterior are completely interchangeable terms. They mean exactly the same thing. Now, and here's an important term to learn. Let me write it over here, make it green, make it a little bigger. By convention. What do you think that means?
What's normally used?
Sort of, exactly. By convention is basically just an artificial rule that people have gotten together and decided on. So for instance, when we talk about the nervous system, the axons that come out the front of the spinal cord, but most anatomists refer to as the ventral roots. However, on the test, if you wrote anterior root, would you get marked wrong?
No.
No, because the terms are completely interchangeable. You may use them completely interchangeable. And if there's a completely interchangeable room for anterior, there must be one for posterior as well. What is that? Dorsal. So again, these terms are completely interchangeable. and you may use either combination that you want. Heck, if you want to use dorsal and anterior, people look at you funny, but you would be 100% correct. All
Is
right.
there ever a case where one would need to be used instead of the other?
No, not for our purposes. Like I said, by convention, there are some examples where people tend to use it more than the other, one more than the other, but no, these are completely interchangeable. So for our terms in our class, you may use them completely interchangeably.
Perfect.
Excellent. But here's a problem. There are two terms that are similar to superior and inferior, but not identical to them. What are they?
Proximal, distal.
True, there are those two, and those are their own problem. We'll talk about proximal and distal in a minute. Those weren't the ones that we're talking about. Those are all, but you're right. They are also similar to superior and inferior, but those weren't even the ones I was talking about. They're their own problem. We'll talk about them in a second. What's the other ones?
Superficial and deep.
No.
Cephalic and
Yeah, how about the one? How about the two we skipped? Cephalic and caudal. What does cephalic mean? Anybody know what cephalic means? To the head, exactly. What does caudal mean?
To the tailbone.
To the tail. Tailbone's not a bad guess, but often caudal and cephalic really refer to, they're often more used in developmental terms. Like for instance, when we're in an embryo and we really still have a tail. So notice cephalic is towards the head. That is similar to superior. Caudal is towards the tail, which is similar to inferior, but they're not identical. They're more used developmentally, or the other place they're used is in the nervous system. In the nervous system, for instance, in the brain, when things are towards the, let's switch colors here for a second. When things are towards the front of the brain, we tend to call them cephalic. When things are towards the back of the brain, we refer to them as caudal. So these are terms that are typically used more in development, typically used more in the nervous system, but again, are similar to superior and inferior, but not identical.
So in the book, next to superior, it has cranial.
Well, so careful. The cranial region, I would say, is the cavity that is the most superior, right? Especially for me, because I have no hair on top. If you have hair, then I guess that would be even more superior than that. But you're confusing directional terms and regional terms, right? The United States, right, and Mexico, right, and then we have north and south. So the United States is north of Mexico, right? And so the same way your cranial cavity would be superior to your oral cavity or something like that. Okay. All right. Since we're talking about it and since it was mentioned, let's switch my example here for a second. Let's get rid of these. And this time we'll go with knee and ankle. So based on what we've talked about so far, what would fit really nicely here between knee and ankle? The knee is what in relation to the ankle?
Proximal.
Proximal.
Exactly. Well, again, you're absolutely right. Proximal is the correct answer. Proximal is the correct answer, absolutely there. However, what might look like it should go there?
Superior.
Right. It looks like superior would fit here as well. The problem is it doesn't. You are not allowed to use superior and inferior on the appendages of the body. On the arms, on the legs, we use proximal and distal. Proximal means closer to the core of the body, and distal means further from the core. So the knee is proximal, the ankle is distal. But what if instead I give you three things? Hip, knee, and ankle. Let's start easy. What is the hip?
Proximal.
What is the ankle?
Intermediate.
The ankle's
Oh,
intermediate.
sorry, distal, and then intermediate is the knee.
There you go, exactly. And then in between would be indeed intermediate. All right. Intermediate basically means between the two. So again, the knee, I guess technically you could say the knee is distal to the hip, but proximal to the ankle, but that's a lot of words. It's a lot easier to just say intermediate.
Wait, so intermediate is the like middle ground for proximal and distal. So it's only used for those.
Well, okay, let's see another example. What if, for instance, I were to talk about the relationship between your skin, your ribs, and your heart? What is the relationship of these three structures? What would you say your skin is in this relationship?
Superficial.
Superficial, there you go. Superficial, what does superficial mean?
On the
On
outside.
the outer layer.
Exactly, it means he just loves you for his money. No, it means towards the surface. What would the heart be?
Deep.
Deep. Right, and again, if it's not, please see a doctor immediately. And then, of course, in this case, the ribs would be what?
Intermediate.
Intermediate. So again, intermediate means in between. So it works for proximal and distal. It works for superficial and deep. It could even work for lateral and medial, right? Superior and inferior. Anytime it's something in between, intermediate. And again, intermediate and medial do not mean the same thing. Medial means towards the midline. Lateral is away from the midline. Excellent. I think most of these that we've talked about so far are pretty intuitive. Caudal and cephalic's a little wonky. The last two that we need to talk about, and these are the ones that people are typically least familiar with, is contralateral and ipsilateral. Does anyone know what ipsilateral means?
Is it on the same side?
Yeah. So think of it this way. If I reach out my hand and touch a hot pan, I pull my hand away from that, and I do it so quickly, I pull my hand away before I even know I should be cursing. What do we typically call that kind of process?
Reflex.
A reflex. In that case, information comes into my spinal cord, is processed by my spinal cord, and goes back out to the same hand. In that case, all the information is on the same side. And so when it's all on the same side, then we call that ipsilateral. However, as many of you know, if I want to wave my right fingers at you, where do I make that decision?
In your brain?
Where in my brain?
Left side.
Left side. Notice that information has to come down and cross the midline to go across to my fingers. So when information crosses the midline, then we consider it to be contralateral. Again, like caudal and cephalic, these are terms mostly used in the nervous system, but there's some other uses as well.
So what does intermediate mean again?
In between two others. So like in between superficial and deep, in between proximal and distal. It really, you wouldn't use it with anterior and posterior, probably wouldn't have that, but probably could use it in medial and lateral, even superior and inferior.
I might have missed this one, but prone and supine, what did you say?
We haven't identified you as those. I was just getting to those, but that's an excellent. You asked the question, so answer them for me. We always assume the body is in anatomical position, but is the body always in anatomical position?
No.
No. So what would the body be like if it was in a prone position?
Laying face down.
Laying down.
Yeah, face down, like you were getting ready to plank or do a push-up. Whereas if the body is supine, how is that?
You're laying face up.
Face up, like you're getting ready to do a crunch or a sit-up. Exactly. Excellent. All right. So this ones aren't so much directional terms as they are orientational terms for the orientation of the body. Now, one of the things you should be able to do as you're learning these, and especially for those of you who have kids, this is a great way to learn this material, is get a paintbrush, right? This works well with boyfriends as well. Get a paintbrush, get a little wet, pick 2 regions of the body and give driving directions, right? So go from the right acromial region to the left popliteal region. And so, for instance, you would start in the right acromial region. You would go inferior to the axillary region. You would go medially to the thoracic region, medially to the sternal region, pass contralaterally to the left sternal region, inferiorly, and so on and so forth. You should be able to give driving directions from one region of the body to the other, using your regional terms, using your directional terms. Right? You're just given driving directions. All right. Questions on that? Now, like I said, this is a fun activity to do with kids because it all involves the surfaces of the body, and you have a nice table that describes it. But, and I'm not encouraging you to do this with your kids, but occasionally you may want to cut the body into 2 pieces. Right? We may want to look and study the body on the inside. Luckily, there are numerous ways we can cut the body into 2 pieces. So, if I were to cut the body into 2 pieces, someone describe to me what those 2, one way we could do that and what the 2 pieces would be. I cut the body into 2 pieces and the 2 pieces are what and what?
Right and left.
Right and left. Excellent. So one way to cut the body is to get right and left pieces. Excellent. What do we call the plane of section that divides the body into a left piece and a right piece?
Sagittal.
Okay, careful. We call it a sagittal. It is indeed a sagittal section. A sagittal section will cut the body into a right piece and a left piece. Now, how many possible sagittal sections are there?
There's 2.
2?
Yes.
Just a left and a right. There's only one place to cut the body in half into 2 sectional pieces.
You can cut it any way if it goes down like that.
Yeah, it could be like the mid.
Exactly. There is an infinite number of possible sections you could cut your body off into. If I cut off my right thumb, do I have a left piece and a right piece?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or if I just cut off partial of my arm, I get a left piece and a right piece. The shoulder, left piece and a right piece, right? There is an infinite number of ways I can make a cut in the body and get a left piece and a right piece. However, I think some of the hesitation is because is there a special section that will cut the body into equal and opposite pieces?
The mid-sagittal, right?
There you go. There is one special sagittal section that we call the mid-sagittal, or it's also referred to as the median section. And that is the one that cuts it into 2 equal and opposite pieces. All the rest do not make even pieces. And so all the rest, the infinite number of rest ones, we call parasagittal. So we have an infinite number of parasagittal sections and just one mid-sagittal or median section. Excellent. What's another way we can cut it where we get 2 pieces?
Transverse.
Okay, what kind of pieces would that give us?
Top and bottom.
Top and bottom, excellent. Of course, this is an anatomy and physiology class, so maybe we should use appropriate anatomical terms. So instead of top and bottom, we should say
Superior,
superior and inferior. Excellent. And as you already told us, that is what we call a transverse section, or what is also known as just simply a cross section. And how many possible transverse sections can we have?
Infinite.
Exactly. We can have indeed an infinite. If we cut off what is left of my hair, do we have a top part and a bottom part? or the bunions from the bottom of my feet. Do I get a top part and a bottom part? Absolutely. Now, is there a special transverse section that gives me two equal and opposite halves?
Right in the middle.
Okay, if I cut you right in the middle, right through the belly button, does the top of you look like the bottom of you just in a mirror?
No.
Yeah, if it does, please see a doctor immediately, right? So absolutely, no, there's no special section of this one for this one. Just those transverse sections. And there is a third way we can divide the body. What's the third way? Not right and left, not top and bottom, but
Front
back.
Front and back.
Frontal.
Anterior and posterior.
there we go. Anterior and posterior. Or what other terms could we use completely interchangeably with anterior and posterior?
Dorsal and ventral.
Sure, although we should put them in order, the same order. Ventral and dorsal, just to avoid confusion. Excellent. Front piece and a back piece. And again, these questions should be getting easier now. How many possible sections?
Infinite.
Excellent. And does the front of you look like the back of you?
Mm-mm.
So no special section for this one as well. Excellent. These three planes of section are what we call the three cardinal sections because they are all at right angles to each other. So if we go back, for instance, to the pretty picture from your textbook, oh, wrong button. Here we go. We can see the three ways to cut the body. When we cut the body, notice they're all right angles to each other. And notice also when we cut the body with a sagittal section, we call it a sagittal plane. Transverse section gives us a transverse plane. Frontal section gives us a frontal plane. So these are our three cardinal planes of section. Are we required to cut the body on these three cardinal planes of section?
Mm-mm.
If I give you a knife and a body, do you have to cut them at perfect right angles from each other?
No.
No, you can hack at it at any old direction and orientation you want. Any of these angled cuts, anything that is not a cardinal section, how do we refer to those? There you go, I heard it. Oblique. So any section that is not on one of those cardinal planes, we would call an oblique section, an angled section. And again, these are useful because notice these different planes of section. Let us see the different spaces inside the body. Because like one of those chocolate Easter bunnies, we are hollow with all sorts of goodness on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to talk about the things that are found in those body cavities. Now, again, terminology is important. When I talk about the United States and I talk about California, those are both locations, but are they necessarily on the same scale with each other?
Oh.
No, one is a more general term and one is a more specific term. All right. So it's the same way here. When we talk about body cavities, there are two main general body cavities. Excellent.
Dorsal.
Oh, great question. I'm sorry. The Alyssa, great question. Hold on. Let's go back. You're all right. We didn't do that. When we cut the body into an anterior or posterior, dorsal or ventral, we call that a frontal section, or it's also known as a coronal. Right? As of course we all know very well now, corona means crown. And this plane of section, if you cut the body through this way, it's kind of like putting a crown on the head. So that is why it is called the coronal section. Normally I have to explain that, but these days we all know what corona means.
Was that supposed to say frontal section or frontal?
frontal. I am not a good typist. I never learned typing. I took photography in high school instead. And so I have a hard enough time writing on the board and talking to you at the same time. It's even worse when I'm trying to type and talk at the same time. So I apologize right now for all of my typing and spelling errors from that. So again, sexy fingers. They're constantly effing up. All right. Back to this. So as I mentioned, when we're identifying the body cavities, we have two that are the most general. And those two most general are the dorsal body cavity and the ventral. And of course, to beat the dead horse, when I say dorsal body cavity, what else could you call it?
Posterior.
There you go. Posterior body cavity. It contains two specific cavities. One of those specific cavities is the cranial cavity. Guess what the cranial cavity contains?
The brain.
Exactly, it contains the brain. And what forms the cranial cavity?
The skull.
Yeah, bones of the skull. Excellent. We also have the vertebral or spinal cavity. Guess what it contains?
Spinal cord.
Spinal cord. And what forms it?
Spinal nerve.
Vertebrae.
There you go. Bones of the vertebrae. So the bones of the vertebrae have holes in them that form that vertebral or spinal cavity. And again, here we've done it with words. Here we can see it with the pretty picture. Notice here in yellow is our spaces that we're talking about. Now, as I mentioned, one of the things about this class is hard. Part of that being hard is we have a tremendous amount of specific information. Another statement you will get very, very tired of hearing me say, but I will say again and again and again and again and again and again, is that people often lose points not because they don't know the information, but because they don't read the questions carefully. Read the questions carefully so you can answer them correctly. I take tremendous care and effort into being very precise with my wording on the exam, and I expect you to be equally precise. And this is exactly why. Because on the exam, I could very easily have this exact picture. And on that exam, I could have a nice big fat arrow pointing right here. And I can ask two very specific, very precise questions. Question one would be identify the general cavity. Question two would be identify the specific cavity. And are the answers to those two questions the same?
No.
No. So on the exam, if I ask you for the general cavity, what's your answer to this question?
Dorsal.
If I ask you for the specific cavity, what's your answer?
Cranial.
Cranial.
If I ask for the general cavity and you say cranial, you are clearly showing knowledge. You understand what that is. The problem is you didn't read the question carefully and you didn't answer the question. And if you don't answer the question correctly, I can't give you credit for that. I will be very precise in my wording, and I expect you to be equally precise in your answering. All right. Again, my goal is not to be tricky. The problem is there are many, many times on an exam like this, I can have an arrow pointing at something and there's 2, 6 different questions that I could ask, all with that same picture and that same arrow. So I will be very precise with the wording that I use, and I expect you to be equally precise in your answering of it. All right? Questions on that? Excellent. All right. And notice also here in red, we see the next big general body cavity. And that big general body cavity, most general body cavity, is the ventral body cavity here in red. Now, one of the interesting things about our ventral body cavity is that it is divided anatomically. What do I mean by that?
It's divided by parts.
Yeah, you got the right idea. Anatomical means a structure. So divided anatomically means that there is a structure that physically divides the ventral body cavity into two more specific cavities.
Diaphragm.
Exactly. That structure is the muscle, the diaphragm. The diaphragm divides, helps if I spell it correctly. The diaphragm divides the ventral body cavity into the thoracic cavity and the abdominal pelvic. All one word. Oh, which is something we should have talked about on the during the introduction. Spelling in this class matters. This class is vocabulary and spelling matters. I will give you one letter. If you, for instance, forget to put that pesky G in diaphragm, I will give you that. Or if you transpose letters, if you went D-A-I fram for the rest of that, that would be fine. But if you spell something more wrong than that, you will lose partial credit for it. So spelling does indeed matter. So here we have a physical barrier dividing the thoracic cavity from the abdominal pelvic cavity. So things in your abdominal pelvic cavity, like your small intestine, should it be up in your chest with your lungs and your heart?
Nope.
No. If it is, then please see a doctor immediately.
Mm-hmm.
However, the thoracic cavity and the abdominal pelvic cavity can be further divided into even more specific cavities. And the thoracic cavity can be further divided into 3 specific cavities. We'll talk about that. And the abdominal pelvic, guess how many specific cavities it can be divided into?
2.
Yeah.
Ha. Oh.
Excellent. Let's start there. It's easy. What do you think the 2 specific cavities of the abdominal pelvic cavity is?
The abdomen and the pelvis.
Yeah, there you go. Abdominal cavity and the pelvic cavity. Now, are they divided anatomically?
Yeah.
So what is the muscle? What is the structure that separates the abdominal cavity from the pelvic cavity? Is there one?
No.
No. Now, again, it's a little bit of a tricky question because we do kind of think of the pelvis, the bony structure, as kind of the boundaries of the pelvic cavity versus the abdominal, but there isn't a physical structure that actually separates them. So there are things that bound them, there are things that define them, but they're not divided anatomically the same way that that diaphragm physically keeps the thoracic and the abdominal regions separate. The thoracic cavity is a little bit trickier, so let's take a look at a separate picture. Oh, and of course, organs in the abdominal pelvic cavity, thoracic cavity, all these in the red are known as our visceral organs, or viscera would be the noun. All right, perfect, excellent. Notice here for our thoracic cavity, we can see our thoracic cavity is divided up into 3 distinct spaces. The first is the right pleural cavity. The second is the left pleural cavity. And the space in between is the mediastinum. So I think I have a nice flow chart. Actually, we'll get to that in a second. So let's start here. Where's my highlighter? There's my highlighter. We'll stick with blue. So region 1 is the right, and of course, remember anatomical position. This is my subject, so that is their right pleural cavity. Over here is the left pleural cavity. And then in between is a region known as the mediastinum. However, inside the mediastinum is a further cavity, and that is the pericardial cavity. We can see it from this point of view, but where I think it's actually easier to see this is from this plane of section. All right, what plane of section is this?
Sagittal.
Sagittal?
Transverse.
Transverse. I like transverse. Let's go with transverse. This is a transverse or cross section. So here I want you to use your yes and no. For this image, is this a superior view or an inferior view of this section? If you think it's superior, I want you to click yes. If you think it's inferior, I want you to click no. All right, come on. I got 46 people in here and I've so far only got 18 answers. Let's go. If you don't know the right answer, then say go slower. Click something. Yep, go back. No, click that. There you go. If you're not sure, hit go slower. Don't make me actually get you guys on camera and raise your hands. We do that with my kindergartners. I don't need to do that with you guys. Come on. Chop, chop. Yes, no, go slow. Go ahead, all right. I will wait. If you like, I can start calling out names of people who haven't said yes or no yet. Like Lee, you haven't marked anything yet. Laura.
I did. I put yes.
Did you?
I had put yes. Yeah.
See
and
it.
then you erased it.
Oh, did I erase it?
They disappear after a little
Yeah,
bit.
they disappear.
Okay. All right. So let's see if we can work this out. Remember, one of the things we need to do is orient ourselves to the body. Obviously, we already have anterior and posterior. We know this is a transverse section. So we know this person is laying down on the ground. And let's think about it. Are they laying down in a prone or a supine position?
Supine.
Supine, absolutely. They're in a supine position. Excellent. Perfect. So they're in a supine position. So we got that down. So if they're laying in a supine position, either their head is in the screen and their feet are sticking out towards us, or they would be laying with their head towards us and their feet through the screen. For the right lung to be where it is, are their feet in the screen or is their head in the screen?
Their feet.
Feet? No, their head.
Their head. For the right lung to be where it is, their head would be in their screen and their feet would be pointing towards him. So if you think about it, we cut them in half and we tilted them back, which means we are looking at this from the underside. This is an inferior view. All right. So we would be looking at them. We cut them like a tree. We timbered them over and we are looking at it from underneath. Get used to looking at the body from different points of view and orienting yourself to that body. All right. That wasn't even the point of all this. The point of this was actually to get to the spaces, the cavities. Notice that our right pleural cavity is the space that does not contain the lung, but actually wraps around the lung. The left pleural cavity is the space that surrounds the left lung. And here in the middle, in yellow, we have the mediastinum. And then inside the mediastinum is a fourth space, and that is the pericardial cavity that wraps around the heart. So we have these 4, really 3, and then further deep 4 spaces inside of the thoracic cavity. Again, your book's got a nice flow chart here that shows this thoracic cavity divided into the right pleural, left pleural, and mediastinum. And then inside that is the pericardium. And like we said, the abdominal pelvic is much easier. Abdominal cavity and pelvic cavity. So notice there are lots of spaces here inside the thoracic cavity. Our abdominal pelvic cavity is a little generic. That isn't necessarily useful for us. Luckily, we can further divide the abdominal pelvic cavity. One way we can do this is with a vertical line and a horizontal line that go right through the belly button. When we do that, we divide the abdominal pelvic cavity into 4 quadrants. Right upper, left upper, right lower, left lower. You can see they have very technical names. All right, so for instance, if I were to ask you about the liver, what quadrant or quadrants would you find the liver in?
Right upper.
Yeah, right upper, yep. Any others? It's a little bit of a tricky question. For some people, their liver may peak a little bit over into the left upper side, but you're definitely right. For most people, it's mostly just the right upper. So let's pick an easier one. The bladder. What quadrant or quadrants would the bladder be found in?
The lower right and left.
Yeah, exactly. It would indeed be in the lower right and left because it crosses the midline. What quadrant would the right lung be in?
The right upper.
Right upper. Everybody agree with that one?
The lung?
Yeah.
I don't
the
know,
lung.
really put it in the.
There you go. Exactly.
The upper.
Remember, we are just talking about the abdominal pelvic cavity. What's the roof of the abdominal pelvic cavity?
Diaphragm.
Diaphragm. So anything that is above it, like the right lung, would not be in any of these quadrants. Because remember, these quadrants are just for the abdominal pelvic cavity. So I appreciate the confusion because you guys are absolutely right. The right lung isn't in one of these quadrants because it's not in the abdominal pelvic cavity. The ceiling is the diaphragm. So anything above that isn't in one of these quadrants. Quadrants are useful. They're fun, but sometimes we want to be more precise. We want to be more precise, then we're going to play tic-tac-toe. When we play tic-tac-toe, we get 9 regions. These are a little bit more alphabet soup in their names. But the names, often when you have these alphabet soup terms, the names tell you everything about them. Epigastric. What does epi mean?
Esophagus?
No,
something
not a
close
bad
to that?
guess. Epi.
Above.
Start.
Epi means above. Epi means above, on top of, above. What does gastric refer to?
Your gastrointestinal system or your digestive system.
True, but typically when they
Or
use
below.
gastric,
I'm sorry.
no, gastric refers to stomach. Specific, typically refers to stomach. So the epigastric is above the stomach. Guess what the hypogastric is?
Above the stomach.
Below the stomach. Hypo means below, right? Or here's a good one. Hypochondriac region. Normally when we think of a hypochondriac, we think of someone who's pretending to be sick. But what does hypochondriac actually mean? Well, we just learned hypo means below. What does chondriac refer to? Anyone know?
Chondriac.
Yep, what does that refer to?
Lungs.
Cartilage. It refers to cartilage. So this is below the cartilage, below the ribs, the cartilage of the ribs, right? And so that's a person who's a hypochondriac is someone who typically, thinks that they have some illness in their abdominal region. And so that's where that term comes from. Now, again, this is where people get themselves in trouble on an exam. if I asked you that same question before, identify the quadrants where you would find the liver, someone will see that on the exam and will be very excited to write out, well, it would definitely be the right hypochondriac region and the right lumbar region, probably into the umbilical region and definitely into the epigastric and maybe even to the left hypochondriac. And again, they will be showing tremendous knowledge, but I asked for quadrants. And did they give me quadrants?
No.
No. So again, read the questions carefully. People often lose points, not because they don't read the question, know the information, but because they don't read the questions carefully. Read the questions carefully so you can answer them correctly. Now here we see them all together, quadrants and regions and some of the organs. And again, here we can see, as I mentioned, how the liver can sometimes go over into the right, at the left upper quadrant. But is everybody's look exactly like that? Does everybody's gallbladder dip down into the umbilical region?
No.
No. Some people, it may be up here in the epigastric. For some people, it might be over here in the right lumbar. But you know where it's not going to be? The left lumbar or the inguinal regions or something along those lines. So again, there can be a little slough in here, but this is definitely not going to be over here on the left side. So for instance, so I could ask questions either way. I could ask you to give me the regions or the quadrants where you would find an organ, or I could ask you to give me an organ inside of a particular region. So I can do it both ways.
Can you go back to the previous slide?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, and again, remember, you guys have this. So remember, you have the slides online. You don't have to be furiously writing all these things down. You have those slides online, and all these pictures are right out of your textbook. So you shouldn't, the whole point of giving you guys the slides ahead of time is so that you don't have to furiously write down everything that's on them. Instead, you can be thinking about what I'm saying and writing down the other things you're responsible for as well. Yes, under the modules, that is correct. Now, I will warn you, I am a tinkerer, so I do mess with these a little bit, so it may not be 100% accurate. I may change a word or two here, or more extremely move a slide or two or something like that. But again, the outlines aren't supposed to be an alternative to come into class. They're exactly that, an outline to help you to follow along as a study tool, but they're not an alternative to come into class. All right.
You ever have to combine regions?
Well, so yeah, like I said, if we were to talk about where the liver was located, you would identify basically 4 regions, 1, 2, 3, 4, that would have the liver in them. So yes. But
okay, like the
you
wouldn't, like the right upper quadrant and
you wouldn't
lumbar.
You wouldn't say like right hypochondriac epigastric region. You would say the right hypochondriac and epigastric region. You would identify them that way. You would identify multiple rather than combining them together.
No, I mean combining between the 4 squares and the 9 squares. Yeah, like that.
I mean, I think this is just showing the relationship of the organs. I don't know. I don't think you would combine quadrants and regions. You would typically use one or the other.
Okay.
Obviously, quadrants are more general. Regions are more specific. Right? I mean, if you think about it, you could say that the right inguinal is in the lower right quadrant, but that seems somewhat redundant. So I don't think you would do that. Okay. All right. So questions on those spaces? Well, Maria, I think I just gave you 2. So again, I could, on the exam, I could have an unlabeled picture here. I could have an arrow pointing here and ask you to identify this region. Or I could ask you to identify 2 organs that would be found in this region or something like that. I could do the same thing on the quadrants. Identify this quadrant, identify 2 organs that are found in this quadrant. Or I could flip it around. Identify the regions you would find where you would find the stomach or something like that. Okay. Excellent. All right. So notice we've got all this hunk and junk, the lungs, the liver, the heart, the spleen, all of these organs in this Ventral body cavity. We have the brain and the spinal cord in the, in the dorsal body cavity. We have all these body cavities, including and containing all these important things. And they're not like some trunk in your attic. We want to protect them. So there are going to be layers of connective tissue, layers of membranes that wrap around and protect these. In the dorsal body cavities, we have the meninges. The meninges are actually made up of 3 different layers of connective tissues. And we will talk about these in more depth when we get to the nervous system. What we're going to talk about now instead is what wraps around and protects the organs in the ventral body cavity. And in the ventral body cavity, they are protected by a serous membrane. The serous membrane is a double membrane that produces a specific function, and we are going to give these membranes names based on their locations. All right. Is this the only red pen in existence?
No.
No, of course not. There are gajillions of red pens on the surface of the planet. But this is the one that sits in my desk. This is the one that has my bite marks on the shaft. This is the one that has my earwax on the end from when I'm picking my ears with it, right? Boogers on the brunt end or whatever it is that's going on with it. Because of its unique location here in my office, we could name this based on that location, Dr. Slutsky's pen. It's no different from any other red pen that's out there. The only difference is its location. And that's going to be one of the keys. We are going to give things names based on their location. And this is definitely true for our serous membranes. Let's draw this first. The example your book uses, and I like a lot, is to take the example of a partially filled balloon that you then take your fist So of course, there's a fist, there's a partially balloon that you then shove your fist into. So obviously, because it is partially filled, it's not going to pop. So there is my hand. And when, let's change colors for the balloon. When I push my hand into it, some of the balloon is going to collapse down onto the surface of my hand. But does it collapse entirely onto my hand?
No.
No, because there is air inside of it. And because there is air inside of it, it doesn't fully collapse down on my hand. So notice part of the balloon is touching my hand, part of the balloon is not. It's all the same balloon. If I were to take a pair of scissors and cut off a piece of this balloon and cut off a piece of this balloon and look at them under the microscope, would they look the same or would they look different?
Same.
They look the same because it's the exact same balloon, right? However, what is different is their location. Part of this balloon is in direct contact with my hand. And that part that is in correct contact with my hand, we call visceral. That part that is forming the cavity or lines the cavity, we call parietal. So the only difference here is location. Does that make some semblance of sense?
Can you repeat the visceral?
So visceral is the part that is in contact with the hand, or in this case, in contact with the organ.
Okay.
And parietal is the part that surrounds it or forms the cavity. And it works for fists. It also works for hearts. So let's take, for instance, the heart. And again, I'm an amazing artist. This is exactly what your heart looks like anatomically. And lo and behold, there is a serous membrane that wraps around the heart, is in direct contact with the heart, but then also forms a cavity around the heart. So this part of this layer that forms the cavity, what would we call that?
Parietal.
Parietal.
Excellent. And this part that is in contact with the heart, what would we call that?
Visceral.
Excellent. Now notice before we had air in between. In this case, we don't have air in between, but remember we said this is a serosa, which is the noun, or better yet, it's a serous membrane. And what do you think a serous membrane does?
Protects it.
How does it protect it?
Secrets fluid.
Yeah, and what do you think we call that fluid?
Serosa.
Yeah, serous fluid. We call it serous fluid. Now, is our goal to fill this with as much serous fluid as we can?
No.
No, but what we do want is a thin layer of serous fluid on the inside here to make it nice and slippery, to reduce friction so that our heart can beat or our lungs can expand. And so here, the cavity contains serous fluid. Excellent. And again, I've done a horrible job drawing this, but let's look at the pretty pictures from your textbook. Here we see the fist. Here we see the heart. And again, visceral in contact with the organ, parietal forms the cavity.
Is this
So-
all in chapter 1?
Sure.
Okay.
It's all around there somewhere. So we have visceral and, oops, so I spell it correctly. And parietal, right? Based on their location, right? On the organ or forming cavity. But we also don't have to be that generic. We can also vary it by location, also by the organs involved. If the organ involved is our friend, the heart, then that specific serous membrane we call, what do you guess based on what's on the screen right now?
Pericardial cavity.
Pericardium, exactly. So notice more specifically, the one that is on the heart is the visceral pericardium. The one that forms the cavity is the parietal pericardium. And then the space in between is the pericardial cavity. Or serous membranes can wrap around a lung. Guess what we call it if it wraps around the lung?
Pleura.
Pleura, exactly. Pleura. So we have a visceral pleura and a parietal pleura and a pleural cavity. And remember, with the lungs, we have a right and a left. And then the third location are the organs in the abdominal pelvic cavity. Anyone know what we call the serous membrane in the abdominal pelvic cavity?
Peritoneum.
Peritoneum, excellent. So if it's on the stomach, it would be the visceral peritoneum. And if it was lining the cavity, it would be the parietal peritoneum. So let's take a look at this with some pretty pictures. Notice, let's go back to, well, here's this one here. Whoops, hold on. That needs to get out of my way there. So here we see the individual spaces there, the pleural cavities, the pericardium around the heart. This is the picture I wanted. Notice, if we look more closely at this, what we can see is this would be the visceral right pleura. This would be the parietal right pleura. And this in between would be the pleural cavity. And notice the right and left lungs have their own individual serous membranes. They're separated from each other. So there is a left visceral pleura and a right visceral pleura. There is a left parietal pleura. There is a right parietal pleura. There is a left pleural cavity, and there's a right pleural cavity. And you may not have thought of it in these terms, but I know you're aware of it, because back in ancient times, we used to go to places at like bars. And at those bars, you would have very important discussions, right? And those discussions can often get very heated. For example, right? Who is the cutest member of One Direction? Right? Now, I know many people think Harry, but all true fans know it is Zayn, right? And those are the kind of things that you can get into a fight over. One thing comes to another, you pull out a knife and someone stabs you in the chest. Blood and air and things like that can get into this space. And when that blood and that air gets into that space, what happens?
Tension pneumothorax.
Right, or the simple terms, your lung collapses, right? Now, when that one lung collapses, do you necessarily die as a result of that?
No, it's air that builds up.
Yeah, as long as you can keep the other lung inflated and it has its own cavity and it has its own space, you're going to be able to survive till the paramedics get there. And of course, their job is to pull the fluid, pull the air out, reseal this so that that lung can inflate again. All right. So again, they have these individual shrink wraps around them. So if you think about them, there are basically, what can we identify? 8 different serous membranes: visceral pericardium, parietal pericardium, visceral peritoneum, parietal peritoneum, right visceral pleura, right parietal pleura, left visceral pleura, left parietal pleura. Notice all of those are serous membranes. The only difference is their location. We give them one of those names based on the different locations. So they're getting their names solely based on their locations. All right.
What does peri mean? Why don't we call it just cardiac cavity?
Peri means around. Pericardial, so it literally goes around the heart. So pericardial just means around the heart. But I know, you're right. The pleuras go around the lungs, so why aren't those peripleural? The simple answer to those questions is because anatomists hate you. Like I said, they make rules and they make, and they change them. So why they use it for one and not the other, I don't have a good answer for that.
What does pleural cavities mean? Like the word plural, does that mean multiple or does it mean something else in this sense?
In this case, pleural refers to lung.
Lung, okay.
So pleural cavity is the cavity around the lung. Visceral pleura is associated with the lung. So pleura means lung.
Okay.
Never
Okay.
any different word for it. It's always going to be pleura.
I'm sorry?
There's never any different word for it. It's always going to be pleura or
Well, so again, there is a little fun with vocabulary. Pleural is the adjective, right? So I could say the visceral pleural membrane, because that would be the adjective that describes the membrane, the noun. Pleura is the noun. So I could also say, visceral pleura. So pleura is the noun, plural is the adjective, but they both basically mean the same thing in this case. They're talking about the serous membranes. Yep. Great questions, you guys. I love that. I love questions. Thank you so much for asking those. All right. Questions on that? All right. So we've talked about the directional terms, regional terms, spaces, the things found in those spaces. And obviously the other thing found in the spaces of our body that we're going to need to spend some time talking about is water. Right? We here in Sacramento probably appreciate this and understand this more than anybody. Right? If you were to inappropriately drink a massive amount of water in a very short period of time, say to win a now incredibly antiquated video gaming system, right? Can that upset the homeostasis of your body, leading ultimately to cellular failure and death? Yeah, absolutely, right? Don't we for a we? We had that court case many years ago now, where someone drank too much water, wasn't allowed to go to the bathroom, ended up dying as a result of that. The movement of water in your body is vitally important, and understanding where that water is and how it moves, right? Your body is on average about 40 liters of water. It makes up about 60% of your body weight. Notice 25 of those liters are actually found inside of the cells. Right? And the rest of it, the remaining 15 liters are basically found either inside the tissues or in what we call the humors of the body, not because they're funny, but the humors are the fluids of the body, and the primary fluid of the body is blood plasma. But it also includes lymph and things along those lines as well. So we will talk about water, where water is found, and how that water moves. That's going to be very, very important for the function of our body. All right, questions on that? Excellent, we did that, perfect. All right, excellent. So this is everything that I want to talk about for lecture. We still have our lab bit to go. Remember, in lab, we need to talk about our organs and organ systems. We need to identify all 11 of our organ systems. We'll identify 1 or 2 organs in each of them and talk about some of their general functions. Now, again, I don't expect you to know everything about these, but you need to know some general information. A perfect example of this is, for instance, you should know that your large intestine is part of your digestive system. All right. However, when we get to the digestive system in 431, you're going to learn that the large intestine has like 8 different parts. It's got the cecum, the ascending colon, the hepatic flexure, transverse colon, splenic flexure, descending colon, sigmoid colon, rectum, anus, all of those. You don't need to worry about knowing all of those for this part of the exam right now. If you knew all of those things now, you wouldn't have to take anatomy and physiology, but you do need to know large intestine digestive system. So we need a good overview of these systems. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take one more quick break. And then when we come back, we will talk about that. No, great question, Maria. No, because everybody's percentages, are they exactly the same? Every male, every female has the exact same percentages of body fluid? No, absolutely not. So again, there will be numbers eventually we'll need to know, but these aren't them. So let's take one more break, one last break. It's 3:06 now. So let's take a 10-minute break. We will restart at 3:16, and at 3:16, we will finish off the lecture by doing this organ system overview. So we'll work on that together. So stretch, relax, do some caffeine, whatever it is you need to do, and then we will continue on. Class is going to continue. We go to about 4:35. I don't think we'll take us an hour and a half to do this. So we may finish a little early today, but we still need I still want to take one more break before we finish this. So I'll see you guys in 10 minutes. All righty. Any questions before we dive back in? Excellent. Stunned silences. I love those more than anything in the whole wide world. Excellent. All right. So as we mentioned, our goal is going to be to identify. That's way too small. The 11 organ systems of the body. For each one, we want to identify 1 or 2 organs and 1 or 2 main functions. So let's start easy. Give me the name of one of our 11 organ systems.
Respiratory.
Respiratory. Excellent. Give me another one.
Cardiac. Skeletal.
I heard cardiac. Cardiovascular. What was the next one?
Skeletal.
Endocrine.
Skeletal. What else?
Endocrine.
Endocrine. Yep. What else?
Nervous.
Nervous. Excellent. What else?
Marvin Gaye. Reproductive.
Reproductive. There you go. I see someone also wrote digestive. Let's get that on there.
Urinary.
Excellent. Urinary.
And then the lymphatic system.
And oops, helps if I spell right. And lymphatic.
And integumentary.
4, 6, 8, 9. So integumentary, excellent. And
Muscular.
muscular.
Nerve.
Excellent.
Oh, yeah, muscular.
Excellent. I think that's it. 2, 4, 5, 2, 4, 6. There you go. There's our 11 organ systems. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So that was the easy part. We've identified the organ systems. So now let's go ahead and identify some basic functions and identify, oops, no, hold on, wanted that. There, and that, there, perfect, all right. So for the respiratory system, what is the, give me one or two of the main functions.
Exchange carbon dioxide and oxygen.
Okay, gas exchange. I like that. Gas exchange is definitely an important function for that. Perfect. Excellent. And again, oxygen and carbon dioxide, those are definitely the two important gases. Which way does oxygen typically move?
Into the body.
Into the body, and CO2 then goes out. What are some of the organs involved in the respiratory system?
Lungs.
Lungs.
Alveoli.
Alveoli of the lungs. Excellent. What else?
Bronchioles.
Yep. So again, all still in the lungs. Give me another organ.
The trachea.
Trachea.
Oh, heart.
I wouldn't say the heart is part of the respiratory system.
The gas exchange.
True. The blood vessels, they do have their own gas exchange in the capillaries in the cardiovascular system, but that is an internal gas exchange, which is different from the respiratory system. Not surprisingly, many of these are related to each other and interact with each other, but they're not actually part of it. Excellent. Nasal cavity. The nose and the nasal cavity are part of the respiratory system. All right. Trachea, larynx, all of those things. What about the mouth? Is the mouth a part of the respiratory system?
Yes. Yes and no.
Yes and no. Okay, well, let's switch the question around. We haven't talked about digestive system yet, but is the nose part of the digestive system?
Yes.
No.
If I put a straw in my nose, is it possible to actually drink milk that way?
Yes.
Yeah, it is possible to get food in your stomach through your nose. Does that mean that your nose is part of the digestive system?
Yes.
No, of course not. It is not. And it's the same thing with the mouth. While it is possible to move air into your lungs through your mouth, in fact, anybody who's ever had a cold survived it because they were able to do that, the mouth is not actually considered part of the respiratory system. The respiratory system is about moving that air into the lungs, but we also want to process it, right? So processing that as it's going through, and the mouth doesn't do that. So technically, the mouth is not a part of the respiratory system. Yeah, there's respiratory muscles that helps us to breathe, absolutely all those, but mouth is not. So mouth is not a part of that. Excellent. All right, so let's go ahead and get rid of that. All right, cardiovascular system. What is the main function of the cardiovascular system?
Blood around the body.
Through the body. Muscle.
Excellent. So moving things through the body, like what?
Nutrients, oxygen.
Nutrients, oxygen, just good things?
Wastes away from cells.
Wastes, absolutely. Chemicals. Yeah, absolutely. Heat, water, all of those types of things, absolutely. Excellent. Transportation, right? If you think about it, we can kind of put all of that into one term. Our cardiovascular system is involved in transportation. Excellent. What are some of the organs involved?
Heart.
Heart. What else?
Blood.
Blood.
Vessels.
Blood vessels come in different flavors. What are the different flavors of blood vessels again?
Capillaries, arteries, and veins.
There you go. Capillaries, arteries, and veins. Excellent. Perfect. Skeletal system. What is its function or functions?
Structure.
Structure.
Structure. And
Protection.
support.
Excellent. Structure, movement, protection. I think those are the big three. Absolutely. And I'm glad that you guys said structure first, right? Definitely structure is a big part of it, right? Here is my hand. My hand has a tremendous number of bones. How many bones in my hand?
Eight. Like just the hand, or are you including your
The whole hand from here
The
up.
whole hand? Okay.
Like 45 or something. I don't know.
Not quite that, but it's a lot. It's a lot, absolutely. You guys don't have to know that yet. We'll get to it, but it's a lot. However, are any of them providing protection?
22 bones in your hand?
I
No.
wouldn't say any of these really give me any protection, right? They allow for movement and they definitely give it structure. Back in ancient times, and by ancient times, I mean the 80s, there was a very famous cartoonist by the name of Gary Larson. He did a series of cartoons called The Far Side. And by far, my most favorite of all of those was this one right here, right? His boneless chicken ranch. I notice without the bones, the chickens are all, draped over the fences and laying on the ground because those bones provide our structure, our vertical axis for our body. So absolutely, they provide some, absolutely. There are some that provide protection. There are indeed some that provide protection like our skull and things like that, but they also provide structure and they are the levers that another organ system pulls on for movement. Of course, what is that other organ system?
Muscular.
Yeah, so this is the one that actually provides the movement for that. But it provides movement by pulling on that skeletal system. Of course, if the skeletal system is an organ system, it must have organs. And are bones organs?
No.
No.
Well, don't you have cells within your bones and your bones come from cells?
Yeah, absolutely. Our bones are indeed organs. I think part of the trick to this, as we'll learn when we get to the tissues, is bones, the organs of your body, are primarily made up of bone connective tissue. But there are other things, blood vessels and nerves and connective tissues and other things that are around it as well. So they are indeed organs. And in fact, how many do you have?
206.
206 named bones. 206 named bones, absolutely. So we have 206 named bones that are all organs in our skeletal system. Excellent. Let's jump ahead to the muscles since we were talking about it. That means that muscles must also be organs?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. How many muscles do we have?
Oh, so many.
Exactly. Over 600. We have over 600. So it's a little bit more scary there. When we talk about the skeletal system, are you going to have to learn the names of all 206 named bones?
Yes.
Yeah, you're going to have to learn all 206 named bones. Are you going to have to learn all 600 muscles?
Really hope not.
No, only about 520. So it won't be too bad at all. All right. So what, I'm just kidding. It'll only be like 475. All right, excellent. For the muscular system, so movement is the big function, right? How does it do that? What is the function of the muscular system?
Attached to the bones.
Yeah, it attaches to the bones, provides that movement, right? Generates heat, right? That's why we shiver. We contract those muscles when we shiver and we're doing things like that. So absolutely. So those two kind of go hand in hand. Excellent. What's our endocrine system all about?
Like your hormones and stuff like that. Right?
Excellent. It produces hormones.
Reproduction.
True. So those can play a role in the maturation and development of our reproductive system. Absolutely.
Like
But what else do those hormones do for us?
Like your growth and like your moods and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, growth, moods, repair, reproduction, all those things. Absolutely. Basically, hormones are chemical signals that tell the body and the cells of the body what to do. The endocrine basically is a system that is specialized for communication. And it uses those hormones to communicate. Is there another organ system that is specialized for communication?
Nervous.
Nervous system is also specialized for communication. However, how does our nervous system communicate?
Through nerve impulses.
Action potential.
Yeah, big electrical signals. And again, the fancy word, as someone just pointed out, is action potentials. So notice both the endocrine system and the nervous system are specialized for communication. What's the big difference between the two?
the way they communicate.
Yeah, one uses hormones, one uses electrical signals. And so why is that such a big difference? What's the other factor that's different about those two ways?
Wouldn't the hormones take longer to act versus like our impulse or signals from the brain that are immediate?
Absolutely. The biggest difference between these two are speed. Right? Think about it. If I touch something hot, do I want that damaged cell to have to make a hormone, release that hormone into the blood, have it circulate in my blood till it finally gets to my brain, where my brain then receives that chemical, makes its own chemical in response, puts it into the blood, circulates it to the blood till it finally comes back to my hand and tells me to pull my hand away? No, my hand would be burned off by the time that was done. So both of these systems are specialized for communication, but the nervous system is rapid, fast, immediate communication. Whereas endocrine, like you guys talked about, is slower processes like growth, like maturation, like reproduction. So it coordinates parts of the bodies over long periods of time, whereas the nervous system is more rapid, transient signals.
Quick question about the nervous system. So you said like with the electrical like impulses, like we would immediately move our hand off of like a hot surface. But for the people that like they're like able to leave their hand like on a really hot surface for like a long time and not feel anything, is that like a damage like to their like?
Okay, so there's
I was
two
gonna
things
ask
there.
that too.
If you are feeling pain, can you leave it there anyway?
No.
You can for a while. I mean, yeah, if you look, if think of it this way, if someone was holding a gun to your head and said, put your hand in that candle or I'm going to shoot you, wouldn't you hold your hand in that candle even if it was burning? Yeah, we can override our reflexes if we want to, right? When a doctor hits you in the knee with a hammer, what happens?
Your knee goes up or your leg goes
Kicks
up.
out. If they put a newborn baby at the next to your foot and they hit you in the knee with a hammer, are you going to kick that baby?
No.
No, right? So we can control our reflexes to an extent. We are able to control them. So yes, so yeah, and different people have different pain tolerances and motivations and yammer and all of that stuff. But I think what you were more asking me about is those people who don't necessarily perceive pain, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the reason they don't perceive pain is because problems with their nervous system, their pain receptors don't communicate with their brain in the same way. So they don't feel that pain. They're not aware of that pain.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Now we jumped away from it. So let's go back real quickly. What are some of the organs in the endocrine system?
Like the
Thyroid? Like
Oh,
the
Kidneys
thyroid,
can be thyroid gland,
pituitary.
gland. That's the master endocrine gland. Excellent. Yep. So those are some good examples. Thyroid. And then what are some of the organs of the nervous system?
Brain.
Brain, spinal cord, nerves.
Spinal cord.
Yeah, perfect. Excellent. Excellent. All righty. What's next? Reproductive. What is the function of reproductive? Entertainment, enjoyment. What's the function of the reproductive system?
To reproduce.
Yeah, the building is tall because it is tall, but right? So yes, it is to reproduce. But what does that mean? What does it mean to reproduce?
Create an offspring.
My toes.
There you go. I like that.
Survive
Create
the
an offspring.
hard world.
I like that. Create an offspring. I like that. Create an offspring. Absolutely. Or as we described it to my daughter when she was young and asked, right? Mommy and daddy put their puzzle pieces together and made her. So there you go. We have those puzzle pieces we put together to produce an offspring, propagate the species. Right? What are, of course, the most important organs in the reproductive system?
Uterus.
Okay. Uterus is one, absolutely, but I wouldn't say it's the importantest of one. I love how everybody always gets quiet usually when I ask this question. So first of all, this is an anatomy and physiology class, so you are allowed to say penis and vagina. Okay, so that's the good news. However, neither of those are the correct answer. So while it's okay to say
The
penis
ovaries and the
vagina,
testes.
there you go. The ovaries and the testes, the gonads are the most important, absolutely. The gonads, the ovaries, and the testes. Obviously, the penis and the vagina are important copulatory organs, and the uterus for housing the fertilized egg, and other ones along those lines as well. Excellent. What's the function of the digestive system? And don't say to digest.
Break down process nutrients and waste.
There you go. I like that. Well, so I'm careful that. So I like the processing and obtain. How about that?
Okay.
Nutrients. All right. Our goal is to take that cheeseburger that you had for breakfast and stuck into your gullet, break it down into its basic components, and then absorb it into the body. Right? Your digestive system is basically a hollow tube that goes from mouth to anus. Right? And then our job is to work at that material, produce that, process that material, and then absorb it. So, of course, what are some of the organs in the digestive system?
Stomach, large intestine, small intestine.
Esophagus.
There you go.
Esophagus.
Esophagus.
Would your tongue be one?
Yeah, absolutely. Tongue is
Yeah.
one, teeth, salivary glands, things like that. All of those. Yep, absolutely.
Gallbladder too?
Yep, gallbladder too, yes.
Oh.
Yeah, in fact, think of it this way. The digestive system, and really this is true for most of our organ systems. All of our organ systems have the primary organs, which are the ones that are responsible for the primary functions, and then secondary organs that kind of help and assist. In our digestive system, it's really easy. The primary organs are the ones that make the hollow tube from mouth to anus. So mouth, esophagus, stomach, large intestine, small intestine, so on like that. Food passes through them. Organs that the food doesn't pass through then would be the accessory organs, right? Tongue, teeth, salivary glands, liver, gallbladder, right? All of those are helping in digestion, but food doesn't directly pass through them. All right. Excellent. A couple more. Urinary. Probably the worst name of all of the organ systems. What is the wait, hold on, what is this? What is the organ system that breaks down most often and why is it so fragile? Ooh, I like that question. I guess,
This is the skin.
well, yeah, I was thinking skin. Skin is what I was thinking as well. The skin is probably the one, and I wouldn't say that it's necessarily the most fragile, but the integumentary system and the digestive system are the ones that are most in contact with the outside world. So those are the ones that are being replenished most rapidly. And really our digestive system, even more than our integumentary system. You get a new surface to your skin every month or so. Every 3 days, you have new cells lining your digestive system. So my guess is that those are probably the ones that are closest to the outside world and so undergo the most abuse. So let's say it that way. All right. So is the goal of the urinary system to produce urine?
No.
No. What is the goal of the urinary system?
Doesn't it get rid of waste and
get rid of waste from
toxins?
where?
Blood.
There you go.
From the blood.
Your blood.
Absolutely. We get then rid of those wastes by leaving them in our body through urine, but absolutely, it is filtering the blood. The important part of the urinary system is to filter the blood. And it is a vitally, vitally important process, right? While you're sitting here calmly in class, just sitting in your chair, 25% of your blood is being directed to your kidneys to be filtered, right? And if your kidneys stopped working, how long would you survive for?
How long?
Yeah, a day or two, maybe. We could stick you on dialysis
really?
for a while, but that's not really a long-term solution. It's a short-term stopgap till we can get you a new kidney, right? And think of it this way. If you lost a lung, if you had to remove a lung from your body, would you survive? Would you live?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, but limited.
You'd be very limited. You probably couldn't, for instance, be a professional athlete, right? It would limit your ability to function. But what about a kidney? If you got rid of one of the kidneys, would that limit your ability to function?
Yeah.
If you're
No.
healthy, no.
No, not at all. We have a tremendous redundancy in our livers. I mean, in our kidneys. One kidney is actually capable of doing all the filtering necessary for your body. So you could lose
How much are
a
kidneys worth?
kidney. Yeah, it's like sell it on eBay and be fine. And you could be a professional athlete. You probably wouldn't want to be a professional athlete because if you injured your other kidney, then what happens then?
You're screwed.
Yeah, then you're screwed. You can consume alcohol with one kidney. It does cause the one kidney to work a little bit more, but the alcohol would actually probably affect your liver more than it would affect the kidneys. Yeah. All right, excellent. Kidneys obviously are the primary organs, and then everything else, the ureters, the bladder, are just about storage until you can get to a socially appropriate location. It's a little bit trickier. What is the function of the lymphatic system?
Oh gosh.
Isn't that like you're like sick, like when you're sick, like to get rid of it? Isn't that one?
Excellent. So absolutely, this is indeed involved in what we call your immune response.
Okay.
All right, let me get on my soapbox here for a minute. You do not have an immune system. A system is a collection of organs working together toward some goal. And as you see, we only have 11 organ systems. However, we do have cells and chemicals and other proteins and things like that that are used to protect our body from the outside world, and that we call our immune response. And many of the cells associated with that are indeed found in our lymphatic system. But the lymphatic system, aside from housing and helping this immune response, does have another function. What is the other function of the lymphatic system? It's another one specialized for transportation. But what does it transport?
Oh, does it transport hormones?
No, well, hormones can travel in it, but it's not its primary function.
Okay.
Have something to do with like inflammation.
Everything to do with inflammation. It's primarily involved with transporting fluids, right? Remember way back here when we were talking about the cardiovascular system, we talked about how we're transporting blood to all those capillaries where the exchange of materials take place. Well, it turns out capillaries are a little bit leaky. Not everything that gets out of the capillaries gets back in. So you can get accumulation of fluid and salts and things like that in an area that we call inflammation or edema. So the job of the lymphatic system is to take that excess fluid and bring it back and deposit it into the heart. And it doesn't just close its eyes, grab it and move it. It filters it and processes it. And that's where all our immune cells are doing their job, checking that lymph, that fluid, for looking for anything harmful. It doesn't move a lot. It only moves about 1 to 2 liters in a 24-hour period of time. Yeah, maybe 3. But guess how much fluid we lose out of our capillaries in a 24-hour period of time?
A lot more than that.
No, about 1 to 3 liters. So what we lose, we're able to get back in. So it helps to maintain that homeostasis. Of course, what are the organs of the lymphatic system? What's the obvious one?
Lymph nodes?
Lymph nodes, absolutely, right? Spleen's a great one. Give me at least one more.
Tonsils?
Tonsils, absolutely. Your tonsils are another great example. All of those are examples of lymphatic tissues helping us in our immune response. And that just leaves us with our integumentary system. Integumentary system is a fancy way of saying what?
Skin.
Skin. Your integument is your skin. Your skin is your integument. Absolutely. And what does it do for us?
Protects.
Yeah, forms a barrier, an impenetrable barrier between us and the outside world.
No.
No, not completely impenetrable. We want to be able to absorb some things. We want to be able to secrete some things. So it is a semi-permeable barrier, providing that protection for us, though, from the outside world. And of course, the primary organ of the integumentary system is, of course, the skin. Excellent. So again, your book's got some great pictures, a nice table that talks about these things. So make sure you know what organs are in what organ systems. And as you'll see, some organs are in more than one organ system. You guys kind of already hinted at it. The gonads, for instance, are both in the reproductive system because they play a role in producing puzzle pieces that we put together to make little kids, but they also produce our hormones. So they're also in the endocrine system. So know what organs are in there, know the basic functions of those organ systems for the next exam. All right. Questions on any of that? See, I told you it wouldn't take us the whole hour. Excellent. So again, remember, even if you don't have the textbook right now, when you log on to Canvas and get into the Mylab and Mastering, you can get a free 2-week trial. And that free 2-week trial includes the e-text. So you have access to the textbook to be able to do that. The lecture slides for the lecture are already posted. The recordings, I try to get on to YouTube as soon as possible. It takes time. The way that Zoom works is first it has to compile the files, and that can take as much as several hours depending on how long the lectures are. Then uploading it to YouTube can take a long time as well. So I would guess that usually by the next day, especially with ours being an afternoon class, with a morning class, it's a little more likely that it'd be on the same day, but usually at least by the next day, it should be up. If 2 days go by and you haven't seen it, then email me, because that probably means there was something wrong with it. So let me know if you see that. All right.
Will you be posting those in the module, like the link to the YouTube, or is it going to be like in the announcements?
No, so there's already a link there. So here, let's again, because I appreciate that I went through this stuff all really, really quickly. So notice if you go back to the modules, getting started is all the activities that you need to do to help you with that. Excuse me. But here under the study tools, here in the study tool, class YouTube for lecture. So if you click this link here, it'll take you to my YouTube site, and that's where the lectures will be posted. And I think you can, again, I'm not trying to get YouTube famous, so you don't have to subscribe. But if you do subscribe, then you'll see when I post things. So I think that's how that works. I don't actually know. But you can always just know within a day or two, you can come here to get to it as well.
Great. Thank you.
Yep. So any other questions? Like I said, I do appreciate that I went through things pretty quickly. So, but that is everything I wanted to cover from a lecture and a lab today. So we are finishing early. Don't expect to finish this early most days, though. Most days we will go long.
So we already did the lab. Was the lab the organ systems?
Yeah. So again, obviously normally we'd break up into groups and we'd do this in the classroom when we figure it out, and we'd come back together and do it as a group. But that's not something that's easy for us to do in this format. So that just means more talking for me. Maximilian, you had a question?
Sorry, I have a question I forgot to ask earlier.
Yeah, well, quickly, let me answer this question first.
Oh, sorry.
I will be setting up more 5-for-5 meetings for you to get the opportunity to do that. Some may be tomorrow, and then I will do a big block of them again Thursday before class, so that you can have that. I don't have a tremendous amount of time to do this after class, though, so I will do things along those lines. All right, so go ahead, Ervik.
So I was going to ask, organelles, study of organelles will be on chemical level or study?
Organelles will be part of the cell level.
Okay.
The lab manual is its own bundle. So there is a textbook bundle and there is a lab manual bundle. They're by different publishers. So that's why there's 2 different bundles. If we got it from the same publisher, we put them together. However, the Mylab lab manual is basically just the same pictures from the textbook and the same words, just truncated. I don't like it. So that's why we use a different lab manual. Yes, the people that I added on the wait list, I'm required to go in order. However, if anybody, so like for instance, if the first person on the wait list wasn't here today, they would be dropped because they won't be able to maintain their priority. So so if you are on the wait list, anybody who was above you on the wait list and didn't show up has lost their priority, and you've bumped up above them. So that is the case for some of you. So some of you are a little higher on the list than you may suspect because of that. And like I said, we'll see who adds, we'll see who I've scared off, and we'll see if I can add more then. Ervik, did I answer your question? I don't remember.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Yes, the textbook bundle and the lab manual bundle can be purchased. No, not through Canvas, through the bookstore, through Foliate, through the bookstore.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
You go back to where it will probably be helpful for me. Where it showed what's due today, I believe, I'm not sure if it was on teacher view or if it was for student view.
No, under the syllabus. So the easiest thing to see under the syllabus, and even under the syllabus, you should be able to go to your calendar. So if you have your calendar set up from your dashboard, you should be able to see all of your class stuff there. So if you go to your dashboard, You've got your to-do list obviously there, but you should also be able to go to your calendar where it should be able to show you those things. But what I find easiest, because again, you're going to be in the classroom Canvas site anyway, when you click on the syllabus, at the bottom of all my yammering on the syllabus, it shows you everything that is due and when it is due. So you have all of this here. That's probably the easiest way to find it in one location.
Thank you.
Yes, the bundles you purchase through the bookstore, and I think the bookstore sends you to Foliate. I think that's who they're using right now. Jessa, did you have a question?
Yes. Do you teach this class in summer?
You already answered that. I think.
Yes, I do teach 430 during the summer. I don't teach 431 during the summer, but I strongly discourage people from taking it because you're getting the information, all the same information. Remember, this is a 2-semester class, so everything we talk about in this class, you need for 431. So there is no cutting any corners, which means you get all the same information, but you get it twice as fast and half the time. You also only get 4 tests instead of 5. So there are 4 testing days instead of 5. You don't get to replace your lowest lecture score with the final. So during the summer, all of your tests count and it all matters. It is brutal, and I strongly encourage you not to do it. Madison, as she points out, it is soul crushing, and she truly means that.
Actually, I took the class last spring when COVID happened, and when we went online, I had to drop because I had one of the questions that I want to know is like on your exam, is it like can you go back if you don't answer it? Because on my last professor, it's pretty much like a game show where it's the final answer.
No, you are presented with all the questions at the same time, and you can go through them in any order. It is a timed exam, so you can't luxuriate your way through it. But yes, so that, for instance, if question 14 on your lab exam, but makes you second guess your answer on number 2, you can scroll back up to number 2 and see that. So yes, they are.
That's good because that was the problem I had. So I had to drop because I wasn't able to answer 20 questions.
Well, you got to remember when we went online last spring, it was crisis mode.
It was really hard.
Exactly. So we were all just trying to survive at that point. I have now taught during the summer. We finished the spring. I did the summer. I've done the fall. So I've taught it online a fair amount. So hopefully that will. Oh, cool. Look, someone's putting together a Discord. Excellent. You're welcome to do that.
Thank you.
Hold on. There's also, I'm sorry, you guys are going so fast through the questions. Again, I anticipate teaching 431 in the fall at this time on these days, because that's usually what we try to do for consistency, but the schedule hasn't come out yet, so I don't know for certainty. Something could happen, who knows what'll happen, but that is the expectation. All right. Sydney, if you email me that link, if you want, I can add it to the study tools thing as well. So I can put your Discord on there if you want to do that. So email it to me and I will add that as a link to there as well.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you for doing that.
And also some people are saying that the lab manual bundle might be a little slow right now or backed up. So is there another place that you know of that we can get it, or would we just have to wait and print it out?
So here's what I said with that. I appreciate that there's still some juggling, and the bookstore can be a little slow on those things. Again, if you wanted to go to something like Chegg or things along those lines, that can be a cheaper option. Just make sure you're able to print or download the pages that you need to turn in, because there's a lot of assignments on that. And remember also, you're going to be renting it for 2 semesters. So just as you're gauging prices, do that. You also don't get the Histology Atlas with that. So you do have to, I would recommend purchasing something like that separately. So if you end up buying the bundle from the bookstore, I do appreciate that it can be a bit of a delay. So I will be a little flexible with the times on that. 11. Oh, they do it by the month now. How interesting. Your first lab assignment is not due till the 26th, so that's a week. But I will also, for the first section, be somewhat flexible with it because I know people are still getting their resources. So I won't typically be marking people late for those assignments, for the unit reviews. Make sure you're doing all the other stuff. But what you can do is just email me and let me know that you're waiting on the unit review, and I'm flexible with those for the first section. But after the first exam, then I anticipate that you'll have had it by then, and then you'll be able to get it.
So whatever we're purchasing right now, we can take it into the second semester.
Absolutely. So, so the textbook, absolutely. The modifying mastering A&P, absolutely. In fact, any bookmarks and text and highlighting and things like doing your book will be in the next class when you get there, because it's a static e-text for you. The only thing that might be slightly different is, I would say, a little over half of the instructors use the Ammerman Lab Manual, but there are a few instructors who don't. So that would be the only thing that you might not use next semester is the Ammerman Lab Manual. But I would say the majority of our instructors do use it, but not all of them. So that'd be the one caveat that I would warn you about.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right. Any other questions?
No.
All right, excellent. Well, then I guess that is it for today. Like I said, thankfully we get to finish a little bit early. It won't always be like this, so we should enjoy it when it happens. Again, in 35 minutes, 40 minutes, your chemistry quiz will open up. You have to finish it by the beginning of class on Thursday. So get to that when you are ready. I encourage you, if you haven't taken a Proctorio exam first, take the Proctorio compatibility and syllabus quiz. I'm trying to grade them as quickly as they come in so that I can catch any errors. When I grade these things, I'm putting notes in them if there's issues about your scanning or any other concerns. So as soon as I grade it, I'm releasing them. So check those, make sure there aren't any problems or any concerns or anything along those lines, so that you don't lose points for doing it improperly on the chemistry quiz. All right. Any other questions?
I actually have a quick question about the scanning. So if we're taking it on a desktop, how would we go about that versus a laptop? Because I saw
Okay.
like the examples.
If you have a built-in camera on a desktop, then what you're going to need is a mirror. So that with that mirror, you can show the space around you and down, right? If it's a built-in the laptop, like this one is here with mine, then you can tilt it up and you can point it around and twist it around and do all those things. Again, there are a couple examples of how people have done that. So this recorded, it will be on YouTube. So some examples of people who've done it correctly. The couple errors that I see the most, and I gotta disconnect my this. The couple issues that I see the most when people are doing this is they're just scanning the upward area. They're not scanning down. I want to see your desktop and the things that are on your surface there and what's behind it, so I don't see that you have notes and stuff like that on the board. And people going too fast would be the other thing. So make sure you're doing your entire area. Make sure you're going slowly. Make sure you're showing me your workspace. Those are the errors that I'm seeing most people are making most. And that sounds a little better now. Most often. Here's what I will say to that. Again, hopefully not many. This is a hard class to cheat on because there's so much information. But I will say that on my during summer, first fully online class after we'd gotten everything, the very first test that I graded during the chemistry quiz, the student was sitting here taking it, would look at a question, turn around to a bunch of papers they had on their desk, and come back, all on video. So that was one of the most entertaining experiences that I'd had for that. I don't know. It depends on how many are cheating and how many are cheating successfully. Have I caught students cheating? Yes. Is it possible that there are students that are cheating and haven't been caught? Sure, that's possible as well. So, but hopefully that's not happening. And again, that's the whole point of showing your area, so that I know it's clean and I can be a little bit more forgiving when you're scratching your head. It's hard. It's not intuitive to be on camera while you're viewing. And a lot of people like to look up while they're thinking, or like to mess with their hair or do things like that. And so it's hard to know what a person is doing, what a person is thinking. So that's why if you've done a really good job of showing me your area, whether it's you're sitting on your bed and the bed is entirely empty, or you're at the kitchen table and you showed me the whole area, or even your desk area and you've showed it to me. If I know you don't have a big stack of paper, a big poster over here, and you're wandering off and you're thinking off into space and you're thinking, then I can be a little bit more comfortable and confident with that. If you haven't done a good job of showing me the left side of your room, and you're constantly looking to the left, then I have no way of knowing what's going on. And so in that case, I do have to do something. So the more open you can be about the process, the more lenient I can be about not having to manage what you're doing. I agree it is weird being on camera but during the test, but what I will say is that I'm the only one who sees these videos. Nobody else sees these videos in the class or anything along those lines. And so really it isn't any different from me sitting in the classroom and staring at you while you're taking the test. It's basically the exact same kind of thing. But yeah, it is a little odd. It does take some getting used to, but unfortunately this is one of the necessary evils that we have to maintain the integrity of this class. Oh, that's a great question. I don't know about Practorio employees. I know they can help you get into or out. If you get kicked out of the exam, I know they can get you back in, but I know they don't get access to my test content. So I don't think they can access your video either. I don't know that for certain, but I'm mostly certain that they cannot access that. They can help you in the process of getting back into the exam if you accidentally tab out. I had a student who was taking the test and their kid uses their computer sometimes, and one of their kids got home from school and their friend tried to Skype them to talk to them, and during the middle of the test the Skype popped up, so she got kicked out because of that, but she was able to get back in. And so if you have problems getting back in, Practorio can help you with those things there, but I don't think they can access the videos. All right. Any other questions? All right, excellent. Well, thank you guys. This was a great first day. Oh, wait. Oh, just when I thought. No, it doesn't have to be clear of pen holders or again, just be limited on your decor. It's better to have it clear because again, it's all about ambiguity. There, if you've got a big, huge cup of water on there, how do I know you don't have a flashcard taped to the opposite side? So if you think about it, if we're in the classroom, you're not allowed to eat or drink during the exam. So I prefer you not eat or drink during the exam. But if you're going to be like Alyssa and drink during it, then at least show me the cup during the exam so that I know that there's nothing on there, right? Earphones is the other big one. I know a lot of you like the noise canceling. Even if you're not listening to anything, you like the noise canceling so that you don't have to listen to your kids screaming and yelling. But there's no way for me to know what you're listening to. So make sure that if you're wearing a headband or a hood or something like that, then at the beginning of the exam, just show me your ears so that I know there's nothing in there, and then you'll be fine for the rest of the test. So it's about being open with the process. As long as we can be open with the process, then we can help to maintain the integrity of the process. My goal isn't to micromanage this, but I just have to maintain the integrity of this class. And so that's what these things are about. All right. Excellent. Any questions? Any others? All these were awesome questions, and I'm glad we had this time at the end to answer them. I'm happy to go through this stuff. So again, my goal is for you to be successful. I get paid the same whether you all get A's or you all get F's. So I am here as your biggest fan, as rooting you on, trying to help you to be successful. That's my goal. It's a funner class when you're being successful, and so I'm going to do all I can to help you to be successful. And like I said, it doesn't have to be competitive. If everybody in this class gets 90% of the points, everybody in this class gets an A. So work with each other, work with me, do the things necessary to be successful. No, you took the attendance quiz at the beginning of class. It's already done. If you did not take it, then you need to stay after and talk to me because you likely got dropped. So if you did not take the exam, then stick around as people start to leave because otherwise you probably got dropped from the class. Oh yes, 5 for 5s. I think all my current times are closed. I'm definitely going to add a chunk of time to Thursday morning before class, but I may also to tomorrow afternoon as well. I don't have time this evening, but I will try to find some time tomorrow, and then also there'll be a big chunk Thursday before class as well. All right. And I'll try to get those. I'll try to get done today. I won't. So we'll work on that. All right. Any other questions? All righty, then have a good day. I will stop recording and I will see you guys on Thursday.